In this video, we're breaking down every moment American Dad went full-on gay. Let's get into it. First up, we got episode Lincoln Lover. Stan Smith wanted to speak at the Republican National Convention more than he wanted his next breath. Picture a CIA agent who spends his free time at conservative Republican meetings in Langley Falls, Virginia, thinking this is finally his moment to shine on the big stage. He took his son Steve to a meeting because he was absolutely convinced they'd ask him to represent the local chapter at the convention. Spoiler alert, they picked someone else. Stan's dreams got crushed faster than his hopes of ever understanding his liberal daughter Haley. Francine, being the supportive wife who has somehow survived decades of Stan's intensity, decided to cheer him up by taking the whole family to see a community theater play. The play was called Abraham L., and it was the kind of pretentious art that makes you question whether the director was a genius or just messing with everyone. The performance featured a guy in his underwear wearing a stovepipe hat, throwing raw steaks onto the stage while quoting advertising slogans and asking the audience deep questions like, "Aren't we all just slaves?" Then a giant mirror descended to reflect the audience back at themselves. Steve delivered the best line of the night when he said, "Lincoln has been assassinated in the theater twice. Once by John Wilkes Booth in 1865, and once by whatever that performance was supposed to be." Stan was so impressed by Steve's joke that he stopped mid-sentence just to compliment it again. Stan absolutely hated this surrealist nightmare of a play. But here's where Stan's brain does what Stan's brain does best. He got mad and decided he could do better. If this artsy garbage counted as theater, then Stan would create a real play about Abraham Lincoln that honored the first Republican president and returned to the original values of the Republican Party. The man went full method actor mode and started researching Lincoln like his life depended on it. Stan wrote a one-man show called Lincoln Lover, and here's where things get historically interesting. The play focused on the relationship between Abraham Lincoln and his bodyguard, Captain David Derrickson. This was based on actual historical records. Captain David V. Derrickson served in Company K of the 150th Pennsylvania Infantry, a unit known as the Bucktails, because they wore deer tails on their hats. From September 1862 to April 1863, Derrickson served as Lincoln's personal bodyguard, protecting the president when he stayed at his cottage at the Soldiers' Home in Washington, D.C. Here's what actually happened historically. Multiple sources from the 1860 seconds documented that Lincoln and Derrickson shared a bed when Mary Todd Lincoln was away. Elizabeth Woodbury Fox, wife of Lincoln's naval aide, wrote in her diary on the 16th of November, 1862, "Tish says there is a bucktail soldier here devoted to the president, drives with him, and when Mrs. L is not home, sleeps with him. What stuff." Another account came from Thomas Chamberlain, an officer in Derrickson's regiment, who wrote in his 1895 book, History of the 150th Regiment Pennsylvania Volunteers, 2nd Regiment, Bucktail Brigade, that Derrickson advanced so far in the president's confidence and esteem that in Mrs. Lincoln's absence, he frequently spent the night at his cottage, sleeping in the same bed with him, and it is said, making use of His Excellency's nightshirt. Historians have debated for over a century what this relationship meant. Was it just normal bed sharing for the era, or was there something more intimate going on? Stan unknowingly walked right into this historical controversy. Stan's play depicted this close relationship between Lincoln and Derrickson with all the subtlety of a sledgehammer covered in rainbow glitter. The thing is, Stan had zero idea what he was actually portraying. He thought he was writing a patriotic tribute to Republican values and male friendship. What audiences saw was something completely different. The play became massively popular, but not with the crowd Stan expected. Gay men started showing up in droves to watch Stan's performance. Night after night, the audience kept growing, and Stan remained completely oblivious to why his Lincoln play was suddenly the hottest ticket in town. He was just thrilled. People finally appreciated his artistic vision. They did, just not for the reasons he thought. The play's success caught the attention of a very specific political organization. The Log Cabin Republicans reached out to Stan with an invitation to speak at the Republican National Convention on their behalf. For those who don't know, the Log Cabin Republicans are a real political organization. They're a group of LGBTQ+ Republicans who advocate for conservative values while also supporting LGBTQ+ rights. The group was founded in 1977, and they're named after the log cabin where Abraham Lincoln was supposedly born, which makes Stan's Lincoln connection even more perfect. Stan received their invitation and was absolutely thrilled. Finally, someone recognized his talent. He didn't bother asking any follow-up questions about who exactly the Log Cabin Republicans were. The Log Cabin Republicans invited Stan to a party to celebrate and get to know him better. Stan showed up ready to mingle with fellow conservatives, and he had an amazing time. The party was fabulous, and I mean that literally. Everything was well decorated, the music was great, people were dressed impeccably, and everyone seemed genuinely happy to be there. Stan was eating it up, thinking he'd finally found his people. During the party, Stan met his neighbor Greg's partner, Tino. When Tino was introduced as Greg's partner, Stan's brain went through every possible interpretation except the correct one. Cops, law firm partners, tennis partners, golf partners, synchronized swimmers. Stan listed every option that didn't involve the actual answer. Then Tino made a reference to being Captain Derrickson to his Lincoln, and suddenly things started clicking. Well, not clicking exactly, more like Stan's worldview started cracking like thin ice. The moment of truth came when Celine Dion's music started playing. Stan's brain finally made the connection. Celine Dion, gays, they're everywhere. I am a pilgrim in an unholy land. He immediately grabbed Greg and told him they needed to leave because there were gays at this party. That's when Greg dropped the bomb. Stan, I'm gay. Stan's response was peak Stan Smith logic. What? Does Terry know? Oh, poor straight Terry. Greg had to explain that Terry was also his boyfriend, and they were both gay. Stan thought Greg and Terry were just two straight dudes who happened to live together, share a dog named Heath Ledger, after the Brokeback Mountain actor, and do everything together. The signs were all there, Stan just refused to read them. Stan couldn't believe he'd accidentally created gay content. When the Log Cabin Republicans explained they'd always believed Lincoln was gay, and Stan's play portrayed him with his boyfriend, Stan was genuinely shocked. You got gay from Lincoln Lover? You guys are really grasping at straws here. But the Log Cabin Republicans weren't backing down. They showed Stan how his play was packed with homoerotic undertones that he'd written completely by accident. Stan struggled with the cognitive dissonance of people being both gay and Republican. His entire worldview treated these as mutually exclusive categories. The Log Cabin Republicans weren't about to let Stan leave confused, though. They launched into an elaborate musical number called We're Red and We're Gay that explained their political position. The song made references to Virginia Slim's You've Come a Long Way, Baby advertising campaign, noted that being gay didn't mean voting for Democrats like Bill Clinton or John Kerry, and included lyrics about not trimming U.S. defense spending despite being fabulous. The musical number was so convincing and well-produced that Stan started coming around to the idea. Something shifted in Stan after that musical number. He didn't become gay, that's not how sexuality works. But he did become fascinated with what he perceived as the gay lifestyle. Stan started getting manicures, using moisturizer, arranging ambient roses in his bedroom, not for Francine, just for the aesthetic, and generally adopting stereotypical gay mannerisms. When Steve noticed his dad's new habits and complimented his manicure, Stan thanked him using a name that sounded more fabulous. Steve freaked out, convinced the gays had corrupted his father with their insidious ways. Stan insisted he wasn't gay, he was just enjoying the lifestyle. This is where the episode gets interesting in its exploration of identity versus behavior versus aesthetics. Stan was essentially trying on the cultural signifiers he associated with being gay without actually being attracted to men. It's like when someone gets really into Japanese culture but isn't Japanese, they're adopting the aesthetic without the underlying identity. Steve, who had been taught by Stan his entire life that homosexuality was evil, saw this as his father being brainwashed and decided he needed to stage an intervention. The Log Cabin Republicans were so impressed with Stan's apparent evolution that they invited him on their sunset cruise. But before Stan could board that boat, Steve showed up at their office with evidence of Stan's past homophobia. Steve dropped off a flyer from the 7th annual Anti-Gay Palooza that Stan had participated in alongside televangelist Pat Robertson. The Log Cabin Republicans were horrified. They immediately disinvited Stan from the cruise and told him he couldn't speak at the Republican National Convention on their behalf. Stan tried to explain it was just a momentary lapse in judgment, that he'd changed, but they weren't buying it. Brett, one of the log cabin members, shut him down completely. Stan realized he'd never be accepted by the log cabin Republicans unless he could prove he was actually gay. So Stan did what Stan does. He went to the absolute extreme. He decided he needed to sleep with a man to prove his commitment. Stan asked Terry out on a date, and they went to a restaurant called 11, which when written numerically as 11 looks like two men standing together. The show creators really thought about this detail. The date was awkward, and when Stan and Terry kissed, Stan felt absolutely nothing. Stan insisted Terry must be doing it wrong because Terry was choosing to be gay. Terry explained, "That's not how it works. Being gay isn't a choice." This is where Stan finally understood something fundamental. Through his failed attempt to become gay, he learned that sexual orientation isn't something you can just decide on a whim. You can't choose who you're attracted to. Stan went home defeated, thinking he'd lost his chance to speak at the convention. Steve was thrilled, believing he'd saved his dad's soul from the gays and brought him back to where he belongs. Meanwhile, at the Republican National Convention, drama unfolded. Nancy Calliope, who was supposed to speak on behalf of the Langley Falls conservative Republicans, got kicked out when someone discovered her second car was a Toyota Prius. In Republican circles at the time, the Prius was associated with environmentally conscious liberals, so owning one while claiming to be a hardcore conservative was seen as hypocritical. Someone literally called her a terrorist for driving a Prius. With their speaker suddenly unavailable, the conservative Republicans needed a replacement fast. Stan showed up at the convention with Steve, ready to help keep the event pure by blocking the log cabin Republicans from entering. They stood at the doors, with Steve proudly doing exactly what Stan had taught him, discriminating against gay people. When the log cabin Republican delegates tried to enter as invited guests of the RNC, Steve told them they were invited guests of the devil. That's when everything came together. The conservative Republicans, desperate for a speaker, asked Stan if he would speak on their behalf. Stan was about to get his moment at the Republican National Convention, but from the unexpected angle of the people who had rejected him. He took the stage representing the Langley conservatives, but something had changed in him after his experiences with the log cabin Republicans and his failed date with Terry. Stan's speech started with a confession. "My fellow Republicans, last night I kissed a man named Terry. Greg, you were on break at the time." The crowd was already confused. Then Stan admitted he was wrong about gay people, and that he'd taught Steve wrong too. Stan explained that being gay is not a choice. He knew this for certain because he'd genuinely tried to be gay and couldn't do it. The experiment failed completely, proving to Stan that sexual orientation is inherent, not chosen. Here's where Stan's logic took its signature weird turn. He told the convention that the log cabin Republican delegates trying to get in didn't choose to be gay, but they absolutely chose to be Republicans. And since they made that choice to be Republican, all Republicans should band together and direct their hatred away from gays toward Democrats, who Stan claimed were choosing to be Democrats. The speech basically said, "Look, being gay isn't a choice, but being a Democrat is. So let's focus our hate on the people making bad political choices instead of people who can't help their sexual orientation." Was it perfect logic? Absolutely not. Did it solve homophobia? Not even close. But it represented genuine growth for Stan Smith, a character who started the episode literally hosting anti-gay barbecues. The conservative Republicans and the log cabin Republicans both accepted this bizarre compromise, and the episode ended with the two groups coexisting at the convention. The episode Lincoln Lover aired on Fox on the 5th of November, 2006, and pulled in 7.71 million viewers, making it the third most watched show on Fox's animation domination block that night, behind The Simpsons and Family Guy. The episode was written by Rick Weiner, Kenny Schwartz, and Nachka Khan, and directed by Brent Woods. The Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation, GLAAD, nominated the episode for Outstanding Individual Episode at the 18th GLAAD Media Awards, which recognizes media that positively represents LGBTQ+ communities and issues. What makes Lincoln Lover stand out is how it tackled the contradiction of being both gay and Republican by using Abraham Lincoln, the first Republican president, as the framing device. The episode took a real historical controversy about Lincoln's relationship with his bodyguard and built an entire story around a character accidentally stumbling into that debate. Stan's journey from homophobic CIA agent to someone who at least understood that being gay isn't a choice happened through comedy, musical numbers, and one very awkward date with his neighbor. The episode also marked a significant moment for Greg and Terry, Stan's neighbors who had appeared in previous episodes. This was the episode where Stan finally learned they were gay, despite them living together as an openly gay couple. The show never made a big dramatic reveal out of it. Instead, it played Stan's obliviousness for comedy while treating Greg and Terry's relationship as completely normal to everyone except Stan. Historically, the episode aired during a time when gay marriage was illegal in most U.S. states, and being openly gay while Republican was considered contradictory by many people. The Log Cabin Republicans, featured in the episode, were and are a real organization dealing with this exact tension, being part of a party that historically opposed LGBTQ+ rights while themselves being LGBTQ+. The episode didn't solve this contradiction, but it did humanize the people experiencing it while still being an animated comedy show about a CIA agent who accidentally writes gay fan fiction about Abraham Lincoln. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have the episode Surrogate. Wednesday morning in Langley Falls, Virginia started perfectly normal for the Smith family. Stan raised the American flag with his wife Francine and their 2 kids, admiring the bald eagle flying overhead like the patriotic CIA agent he is. Everything was exactly how Stan liked it, traditional, American, and following the proper order of things. Then his gay neighbors Greg and Terry showed up and decided to ruin Stan's entire worldview in one conversation. Greg and Terry walked over for their usual neighborly chat. Stan greeted them with his awkward attempt at being supportive, asking if they were planning to spend the day shopping, brunching, parading, or taking the day off and just being gay. Stan genuinely thought this was him being accepting and cool. He even called them Queenie bitches, thinking that was friendly bonding language. The fact that Stan considered this progress from his previous homophobia is honestly kind of sad, but that's where we're starting. The big news came fast. Greg and Terry announced they decided to have a baby. Francine immediately congratulated them and asked if they were adopting. Terry explained they were doing in vitro fertilization instead, having their own biological child. They had an egg donor lined up, would combine her eggs with their sperm, then implant those embryos in a surrogate. If everything went according to plan, one embryo would grow to term, and they'd have their baby. Stan's brain completely short-circuited. He compared the whole process to Star Trek, then specifically asked if it was from Deep Space Nine because he refused to watch that show for multiple unspecified reasons. This is actually a funny reference because Deep Space Nine did have a surrogacy plotline in Season 5 to explain actress Nana Visitor's real-life pregnancy. Stan couldn't wrap his head around the science of IVF and treated it like impossible science fiction, even though this technology has existed since the 1970 seconds. The episode showed Greg and Terry struggling to find a surrogate they both agreed on. Terry would suggest candidates, and Greg would shoot down every single one. One woman had yellow teeth, so Greg assumed she smoked and rejected her immediately. Another woman listed her favorite movie as Erin Brockovich, and Greg didn't want their baby absorbing the message, "Show your boobs to get clean drinking water while in the womb." Terry was exhausted dealing with Greg's pickiness, and they were stuck with 0 viable surrogates. Francine visited Greg and Terry, bringing some of Steve and Haley's old baby clothes to show her support. Terry explained they were at a standstill because Greg kept rejecting all their surrogate options. Francine looked at their situation and made a spontaneous decision that would change everything. She volunteered to carry their baby herself. Her logic was simple. She lived right across the street. Both her previous pregnancies were easy, and her doctor said she had what she proudly called a big, spongy cervix. Francine even joked that she was bragging about her anatomy, just like she did at last week's PTA meeting. Here's where things got complicated. Francine knew Stan would lose his mind over this decision, so she kept her pregnancy completely secret from him. The episode showed Francine imagining how Stan would react if she told him. In her imagination, Stan grabbed a beer bottle and smashed it to attack her. Then he came back with a chainsaw. Then he returned with a leopard. Finally, he settled on a leopard holding a chainsaw. This visual comedy showed Francine understood exactly how badly Stan would take the news. For 6 entire months, Francine walked around pregnant with Greg and Terry's baby, and Stan noticed absolutely nothing. Stan thought Francine was intentionally gaining weight to prove some point about him loving her for who she is. The man lived with his pregnant wife for half a year and never once questioned what was happening. When Francine's doctor finally called the house, Stan answered and got the news in the worst possible way. The doctor explained that the baby you're carrying for 2 gay men is perfectly fine. Stan's reaction was immediate rage. He relayed the information to Francine by shouting, "Your doctor called. He said the baby you are carrying for 2 gay men is perfectly fine and you should be very excited." When Stan confronted Greg and Terry, he literally tried to fight them. But instead of a normal fight, Greg and Terry put on music from West Side Story and engaged in dance combat, gracefully dodging all of Stan's attacks while performing elaborate choreographed moves. Stan was furious that the fight was unbearably campy. Francine defended her decision, explaining that Greg and Terry didn't pressure her. She volunteered because she wanted to help. Stan declared that what was happening inside Francine's body was wrong because he believed you can't raise normal children in an abnormal environment. Stan's reasoning included the wild claim that gay parents raising children would somehow lead to girls playing with trucks, boys playing with dolls, horses eating each other. The horse thing was apparently Stan's unproven theory about the chaos that would result from non-traditional families. Haley stepped in with the reality check that changed Stan's behavior temporarily. She reminded Stan that regardless of how he felt about the situation, the baby existed right now inside Francine. Getting angry and stressing Francine out was bad for the baby. All Stan could do was focus on what was best for the baby instead of his own feelings. This actually worked. Stan calmed down and became supportive during the rest of the pregnancy. The episode showed Stan helping Greg and Terry prepare for the baby's arrival over the following months. Greg was nervous and kept reading WebMD, discovering terrifying information like many babies are born without anuses every year. Terry kept telling Greg to stop reading medical websites. Later in the episode, as they prepared for Francine's delivery, Terry was visibly annoyed watching Greg read a book titled "Everybody Poops Except a Baby Without an Anus." Stan also cooked dinner for Greg and Terry every night, and even tried to keep them focused on appropriate gay activities instead of the baby preparations, going as far as being excited when Terry wore an apron because that's almost a dress. When Francine went into labor, everyone rushed to the hospital. The delivery went smoothly, and Francine gave birth to a healthy baby girl. Greg and Terry were thrilled to finally meet their daughter, but the moment that baby was born, Stan's temporary acceptance disappeared completely. He grabbed the newborn and bolted from the hospital, beginning what would become a bizarre cross-country kidnapping journey. Stan named the baby Liberty Bell and started driving toward Nebraska. His plan was simple, but based on flawed legal understanding. In 2007, Nebraska was one of many states where gay couples did not have parental rights. Stan believed that once he crossed the Nebraska state line with Liberty Bell, he could put her up for adoption and give her what he called a normal family. Greg and Terry would lose all legal claim to their daughter. Francine called Stan demanding he bring the baby back, but Stan insisted he'd prayed on this and was doing the right thing. During the phone call, Stan mentioned that something hard and black just fell off the baby's belly button, and he thought it was beef jerky and ate it. This was the baby's umbilical cord stump, which naturally falls off after birth. Stan genuinely believed he'd eaten beef jerky, which is both disgusting and shows how unprepared he was to care for an infant. As Stan drove toward Nebraska with kidnapped baby Liberty Bell, he found himself being chased by gay rights activists who were trying to stop him from reaching the state border. Local bystanders along Stan's route actually supported his kidnapping mission, which was the episode's way of showing how widespread homophobia was in 2007 America. The chase across the country showed gay truckers pursuing Stan, while random people he encountered cheered him on for protecting the baby from her gay parents. Stan's car eventually crashed in a cornfield near the Nebraska border. He wandered through the corn until he found a farmhouse where he was taken in by what he assumed was a traditional heterosexual family. The homeowner introduced herself as Lily, and Stan immediately praised her for having fantastic children and a beautiful home. He said he couldn't wait to meet her husband and shake his hand. That's when things got interesting. A woman walked in wearing professional business attire, and Lily greeted her with a kiss, saying, "Hi, honey, I see you found him." Stan looked at this person and said, "Sir, I must tell you, "You have a lovely family. You're a lucky man." The woman responded that her name was Al, short for Allison, and she was actually a woman. Stan's brain glitched hard. He told Al, "I love long hair on a man. Grown-up Jesus had long hair, but his breasts weren't as luscious as yours." And then it finally clicked. Stan shouted, "Holy expletive, you're a woman." Allison confirmed that yes, Lily was her partner, and they were a lesbian couple raising their 2 children together on this Nebraska farm. The characters Al and Lily were voiced by Jane Lynch and Leisha Haley, respectively, and both voice actresses are actual lesbians in real life. Jane Lynch is best known for playing Sue Sylvester on Glee, while Leisha Haley played Alice Piasecki on The L Word. The show cast real lesbian actresses to voice lesbian characters, which was a thoughtful casting choice. Al and Lily explained to Stan that they brought him to their home specifically to show him that a gay family can be stable and normal. They hoped seeing their functional household would convince Stan to return baby Liberty Bell to her parents, Greg and Terry. Stan looked around at the stable lesbian farm family and made the absolutely unhinged decision to kidnap their 2 children as well. He stole Al and Lily's truck with all 3 kids, Liberty Bell plus Al and Lily's 2 children, and started driving toward the Nebraska state line. As Stan drove with 3 kidnapped children, Al and Lily's kids started talking about their family. They argued and bickered with each other like normal siblings. Stan instinctively yelled at them using his own children's names, calling them Steve and Haley, before catching himself. That's when the realization hit Stan like a truck. These kids raised by lesbian mothers acted exactly like his own kids raised in a traditional family. They had the same sibling dynamics, same arguments, same behaviors. The kids were completely normal. Stan also noticed that despite living on a lesbian-run farm, the horses were not eating each other. His bizarre theory about gay families causing horses to cannibalize each other was proven completely false. Everything Stan believed about gay parents creating dysfunctional children or causing societal chaos was wrong. The evidence was sitting right there in his stolen truck, arguing about normal kid stuff. Stan stopped the truck, literally 1 inch from crossing the Nebraska state border. He turned around and drove back to return Al and Lily's children to their moms, then continued back to Virginia to return Liberty Bell to Greg and Terry. Stan had his moment of growth and realized that gay families were just as capable of raising normal, healthy children as straight families. The episode portrayed this as Stan finally accepting homosexual people as a whole, showing genuine character development. Greg and Terry were reunited with their daughter, but they were understandably furious with Stan for kidnapping their newborn baby and taking her on a multi-state crime spree. When Stan tried to apologize, Greg and Terry punched him in the face. They also filed a restraining order against Stan as punishment for the kidnapping. The episode showed Greg, Terry, Francine, and the kids playing with baby Liberty Bell in the park, while Stan had to watch from a distance, legally required to stay away from the family he'd tried to break apart. The episode Surrogate first aired on Fox on the 2nd of December, 2007. It was written by Eric Durbin and directed by Tim Parsons. The episode pulled in 6.48 million viewers, despite airing against Cold Case on CBS and The Oprah Winfrey Show on ABC. It received a 3.2 rating in the 18 to 49 demographic. These numbers were significantly down from the previous episode, The 4 2-Year-Old Virgin, which had 8.12 million viewers. The episode's viewership was actually the lowest since the season's episode, Dope and Faith. The inspiration for Surrogate came from executive producer Kenny Schwartz's real life. He had a child through IVF during the episode's production. This personal connection brought authentic detail to Greg and Terry's IVF journey and the emotions surrounding finding a surrogate and preparing for parenthood. Critical reception was mixed to negative. Genevieve Koski of the AV Club gave it a harsh C grade, calling it predictable and saying she preferred family-centered episodes to politically satirical ones. James Musgrove of IGN cited the episode as a fine example of the season's severely unfunny installments, calling it quite a stumble that recalled the show's shaky first steps. However, Francis Rizzo III of DVD Talk praised the episode as wonderful and commended it for sharpening the knives with its social commentary. The episode explored homophobia through Stan's character and his conservative worldview. Stan's behavior throughout the episode was intentionally irrational and groundless, showing how stereotype-based thinking leads to absurd conclusions like gay parents will make horses eat each other. The episode used Stan as a vehicle to tackle what was an extremely controversial topic in 2007, whether gay couples should be allowed to have children. The episode's message was clear. Gay families are just as stable and functional as straight families, and children raised by same-sex parents turn out exactly like any other kids. What makes Stan's arc interesting is that it shows his acceptance of gay people as inconsistent and evolving. In the previous episode, Lincoln Lover, Stan learned that being gay isn't a choice and accepted the log cabin Republicans. But in Surrogate, he still rejected the idea of gay people raising children, showing that acceptance isn't a single moment, but an ongoing process with setbacks. This realistic portrayal of changing attitudes made Stan's character development more believable than typical very special episode treatments of homophobia. The episode aired during a time when same-sex marriage was illegal in most U.S. states. Gay adoption was prohibited in many places, and the idea of gay couples having biological children through IVF and surrogacy was highly controversial. Virginia, where the show is set, did not allow gay couples to have parental rights in 2007. Legal surrogacy contracts for same-sex couples weren't approved in Virginia until 2019, 12 years after this episode aired. The episode was tackling an extremely current and divisive political issue by showing gay characters simply wanting to be parents. The subplot of the episode involved Steve and Roger pranking Klaus by pushing him down a water slide in his fishbowl. Klaus delivered an elaborate threat of revenge, declaring, "Allow me to impress upon you the severe mistake you have made. For years my conduct has been largely benign, and yet without provocation you have severed our détente and forced me to unleash upon you the vengeful flame of 1,000 suns. You shall curse your mothers for the day of your birth." Steve and Roger became so paranoid about Klaus's revenge that they hid in the attic for the entire 9 months of Francine's pregnancy. When they finally came down to beg Klaus for forgiveness, they discovered he'd completely forgotten about the incident. Klaus then vowed revenge all over again, sending them right back into paranoid hiding. By the end of Surrogate, Stan learned that his fears about gay parents were completely unfounded. The lesbian couple's children were normal kids. Greg and Terry were capable parents who loved their daughter. The episode used comedy to deliver a straightforward message. Gay families deserve the same rights and respect as straight families, and children don't care about their parents' sexual orientation, they just need love and stability. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the episode Daddy Queerest. Stan and Francine attended a party at their neighbors Greg and Terry's house, enjoying what seemed like a normal evening in Langley Falls. The next morning brought unexpected drama when Terry showed up at the Smith house asking Francine to take care of his and Greg's baby daughter, Liberty Bell. Terry was visibly nervous, and the reason became clear fast. His father was coming to town. Terry explained that his father was Tank Bates, an all-pro fullback for the Washington Redskins who was coming to Langley Falls for his jersey retirement ceremony. This was a huge deal. Tank Bates was a football legend, but Terry had a massive problem. His father had no idea Terry was gay, didn't know about Greg, and definitely didn't know about their baby daughter, Libby. Terry had been living with his partner for 9 years. They had adopted a child together, and Tank Bates knew none of it. Greg was frustrated with the situation. He pointed out that the kitchen door entrance at family events was supposed to be just for family members, yet Terry kept him separated. They'd been together nearly a decade with a baby, and Terry still couldn't tell his father the truth. Greg insisted Terry needed to come out to Tank. Stan, hearing that Tank Bates was Terry's father, got immediately excited about football. He started reciting plays from memory, getting so enthusiastic about football statistics that he barely noticed the actual problem. Francine took a different approach. As Liberty Bell's godmother, she told Terry he didn't want his daughter growing up thinking being gay was something to be ashamed of. She promised to support him through the coming out process. Terry, feeling encouraged by Francine's support and Greg's insistence, made the decision he would tell his father the truth when Tank arrived. When Tank Bates showed up, Terry completely panicked and abandoned his plan. Instead of coming out, Terry told his father that Francine was his girlfriend and they'd had baby Liberty Bell out of wedlock. To make this lie work, Terry claimed that Greg and Stan were the gay couple who lived across the street. This meant Stan and Francine had to temporarily swap living arrangements to maintain the deception. Francine moved in with Terry and Greg, while Stan moved in with Greg's place, forcing Greg to move in with Stan. This living situation created an unexpected dynamic. Since Stan and Greg were both separated from their actual spouses, they decided to go out to dinner together. The two started bonding over drinks and conversation. Stan even brought along his CIA boss, director Avery Bullock, who was impressed enough by Stan and Greg's rapport to invite them to a fancy cocktail party. Stan thought he was just hanging out with a buddy, but the optics looked completely different to everyone else. At the cocktail party, things went wrong. Stan embarrassed Greg in front of the other guests, showing he was the unsophisticated one in their fake relationship. Greg, fed up with Stan's behavior, pushed him into the pool. This was apparently a pattern. Francine later yelled at Stan, asking, "How come every time we go to a party you push me in the pool?" Stan defended himself, saying everyone's afraid to be the first one in the pool, so Francine was the party starter. Francine countered that her purse tampons were floating in the water, to which Stan replied that people were impressed by how big they got. Drunk and angry after being pushed in the pool, Stan called Francine, demanding she come home immediately because Greg was mean to me. Tank Bates, overhearing this conversation, was confused. He called Stan Fruit Loop and said Francine was Terry's girlfriend. That's when drunk Stan let everything slip. He told Tank that Francine was actually Stan's wife and Greg was Terry's boyfriend. Stan shouted the truth. "Terry and Greg are in love. Your son is gay." Terry fainted dramatically upon hearing this reveal. He literally swooned into his father's arms in the most stereotypical, theatrical way possible. Stan, still drunk, pointed at Terry's fainting style and said, "See, that's not how a straight guy faints." Then Stan demonstrated how a straight man faints by passing out from all the alcohol he'd consumed, dropping like a rock to the floor. Tank Bates was furious. He wasn't just angry that Terry had lied to him, he was disgusted that Terry was gay. Tank made absolutely no attempt to hide his feelings. He told Terry directly that he found homosexuality utterly disgusting and left immediately. Terry was devastated. Greg and Terry were both furious at Stan for drunkenly outing Terry before he was ready, even though Francine had been pushing Terry to come out on his own. Stan, believing he understood the situation, decided he could fix Terry's relationship with his father. Stan's theory was simple. Tank's refusal to accept Terry being gay must mean Tank had some deep-seated secrets of his own. Stan convinced himself that Tank Bates must be a closeted homosexual who couldn't accept his son because he couldn't accept himself. Stan compared it to Kevin Spacey, using that as his example of closeted men who react badly to other people's homosexuality. Stan decided the best course of action was to publicly out Tank Bates at his Jersey retirement ceremony. He crashed the ceremony at the football stadium, where Tank was about to give a speech in front of thousands of fans. Stan grabbed the microphone and announced to the entire crowd, "Tank Bates is a homosexual." He repeated it multiple times, making sure everyone heard. The crowd went silent. Terry, watching from the stands, was mortified. Stan's grand plan was falling apart because it was based on a completely incorrect assumption. Tank Bates was definitely not gay. In fact, Tank was revealed to be a notorious womanizer who had slept with all the Redskins cheerleaders, the coach's daughter, and even the announcer's wife, destroying that family in the process. Tank's homophobia had nothing to do with self-hatred or closeted desires. He was just genuinely prejudiced. Stan tried to salvage the situation by talking to Tank directly. He told Tank he was sorry for announcing Tank's son was gay to the entire stadium, but pointed out that deep down Tank must have suspected something. Tank bluntly responded that he had no idea Terry was gay, and finding out was terrible news. Stan tried another angle, suggesting that even though Tank thought it was terrible, surely he was still glad his son was happy. Tank shut that down immediately too. Tank explained his position with brutal honesty. He admitted he had no inkling of Terry's sexuality before this moment. He didn't care if being gay made Terry happy. He knew being gay wasn't a choice. But none of that mattered to him. He still found it utterly disgusting. Tank represented a harsh reality that the episode didn't try to soften. Some people understand homosexuality perfectly well and still choose to be prejudiced. Tank had no traumatic experience explaining his homophobia, no suppressed gay urges of his own, no confusion about how sexuality works. He just hated it anyway. Terry, standing in the middle of the football stadium with his father rejecting him publicly, finally found his courage. He asked his father directly to accept him for who he was. Tank refused. He told Terry he couldn't accept his homosexuality and walked off the field, effectively disowning his son in front of thousands of witnesses. Greg and Terry were understandably angry at Stan for turning Terry's coming out into a public spectacle at a football stadium, but Francine defended Stan, pointing out that at least he tried to help. Francine told Greg and Terry to look at her relationship with Stan. She loved Stan, despite all his faults, his ignorance, and his tendency to make everything worse. If Francine could love someone as difficult as Stan, then Greg and Terry didn't need the approval of someone as intolerant as Tank. They had each other, they had their daughter Libby, and they didn't need Tank Bates in their lives. This realization helped Terry and Greg move forward. They decided that if Tank couldn't accept their family, then Tank wasn't worth having around. The episode ended with Terry and Greg choosing their own family over Terry's biological father, showing that sometimes you have to cut out people who refuse to accept who you are, even when those people are your parents. The episode had a secondary subplot involving Steve and his friends trying to get alcohol so they could attend a party. They heard about someone who bought beer for underage kids and tracked this person down. Steve discovered the alcohol supplier was Roger wearing a disguise. Roger, the Smith family's alien houseguest, had created yet another persona, this time as someone who illegally provided alcohol to teenagers. Roger got Steve and his friends drunk, and Steve learned about beer goggles the hard way. While heavily intoxicated, Steve made out with an extremely unattractive girl. Roger later publicly shamed Steve for this at a Mothers Against Drunk Driving meeting, where Roger gave a speech about the dangers of underage drinking. Roger cited statistics. 67% of young people who drink before age 15 will try an illicit drug. 21% of underage drivers killed in accidents were intoxicated, and 96% will end up making out with a girl of questionable attractiveness. After thoroughly humiliating Steve in front of the MADD meeting, Roger suggested they go get some beers to help Steve feel better about the situation. This was classic Roger behavior, creating problems, exploiting them, then offering to help solve them through the same method that caused the problem initially. Roger's character throughout American Dad demonstrates fluid sexuality and gender presentation. Roger identifies himself explicitly as a fey, pansexual alcoholic non-human in the episode You Det Your Life. Pansexuality means attraction to people regardless of gender, essentially being attracted, to individuals without gender being a limiting factor. Roger's pansexuality is shown consistently throughout the series through his romantic and sexual interests in men, women, other aliens, animals, and even inanimate objects like his checkbook and diary. Roger's gender presentation is equally fluid. He creates hundreds of different personas, many of which are women. He doesn't just dress as women. He fully embodies female characters with distinct personalities, voices, and life histories. Some of his famous female personas include Genevieve Vivance, a snarky news reporter, and Jeannie Gold, a wedding planner. Roger's male personas are equally varied, ranging from criminals to professionals to authority figures. The show never treats Roger's gender fluidity or pansexuality as a joke in itself. Instead, Roger's various personas are plot devices that drive stories forward. His ability to become anyone allows the show to explore different perspectives and situations. Roger's sexuality and gender expression are simply accepted aspects of his character, treated as normal parts of who he is, rather than something requiring explanation or justification. In April 2014, Roger was voted Gayest Cartoon Character of All Time in a March Madness-style competition held by Logo TV. This recognition acknowledged Roger's importance as LGBTQ+ representation in animation, even though Roger is technically an alien rather than human. Roger's character shows that sexuality and gender exist on spectrums, and that one person can embody many different presentations depending on context and personal expression. Roger also had a sexual relationship with Klaus, the Smith family's goldfish, who used to be a German man before his brain was transplanted into a fish body. In the episode Cloger, Klaus and Roger engaged in a secret relationship, though Klaus eventually broke it off when Roger wanted to act like a real couple. Klaus was only interested in the taboo element of sneaking around, not an actual romantic relationship. Roger tried to recreate the taboo by dressing as a little girl and pretending to be Klaus's daughter, which got Klaus arrested. Roger then got himself arrested so they could be together in prison, but ended up in solitary confinement after killing an inmate who tried to come between them. Roger's character is deeply flawed. He's narcissistic, manipulative, selfish, and often cruel. He's described as having sociopathic tendencies and frequently victimizes the Smith family despite living in their home, but his pansexuality and gender fluidity are never presented as flaws or sources of comedy. Instead, they're just intrinsic parts of who Roger is as a character. The show makes jokes about Roger's behavior and schemes, not about his sexual orientation or gender presentation. The episode, Daddy Queerest, aired on Fox on the 10th of May 2009. It was written by Nahnachka Khan and directed by Albert Caleros. The episode pulled in viewers as part of Season 4, Episode 19 of American Dad. The episode tackled the difficult reality that coming out doesn't always go well, and that some family members will choose prejudice over love. One interesting detail about the episode: Tank Bates was having his number 44 retired by the Washington Redskins. In reality, the Redskins' policy, with the exception of player Sammy Baugh, was to not officially retire numbers. However, some numbers were unofficially retired and withheld from new players, including number 44, which was worn by John Riggins. The show used this real football detail to make Tank's character feel more authentic as a legendary player. The episode's message was clear but not preachy. Some people will reject you for being gay, regardless of logic, facts, or family bonds. Terry tried everything to avoid this outcome. He hid his sexuality for years, he lied when pressured, he lived a double life. None of it protected him from his father's rejection once the truth came out. But the episode also showed that rejection from bigoted family members doesn't have to destroy you when you have people who truly love and accept you. Greg and Terry's relationship had already survived 9 years, and the addition of a baby before Tank entered the picture. Tank's disapproval didn't change the reality of their loving family. The episode showed that chosen family, the people who support and accept you, matters more than biological family who reject you. Francine, Stan, despite his chaos, and the rest of the Smith family stood by Greg and Terry even when Tank walked away. The episode represented American Dad's approach to LGBTQ+ themes, treating gay characters as normal people dealing with real issues rather than as punchlines or teaching moments. Terry and Greg appeared in multiple episodes throughout the series as recurring characters, not just for special gay-themed episodes. Their relationship was treated as equivalent to Stan and Francine's, sometimes good, sometimes complicated, but always real. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Now we get to one of the show's longest-running gags, where Steve Smith is repeatedly portrayed as unintentionally gay, especially in scenes with his friend Snot. Steve Smith is 14 years old, attends Pearl Bailey High School, and is the youngest member of the Smith family. He's nerdy, emotional, and loves performing, whether singing, dancing, or putting on dramatic shows. Steve has 3 main friends who are just as uncool as he is. Barry, who's overweight and has a strange voice. Toshi, who only speaks Japanese despite understanding English. And his best friend Snot. Shmuley Snot Lonstein is Steve's closest friend. Snot has curly hair, acne, and a wispy mustache. The nickname Snot was given to him by the friend group. He lives with his mother, Mrs. Lonstein, and his father is implied to have left the family. Snot is Jewish and has had a bar mitzvah featured in the show. In the episode License to Till, Snot calls all 3 guys his friends, but whispers to Steve that he's the best of the bests, confirming Steve holds a special place as Snot's closest companion. Throughout American Dad's run, the show has maintained what multiple sources describe as an ongoing joke that Steve is gay, specifically with his best friend, Snot. This isn't a single episode gag. It's a recurring element woven through multiple seasons and episodes, creating a pattern of homoerotic subtext between the 2 teenage characters. The show treats this as comedic ambiguity, never definitively stating Steve's sexuality while constantly hinting at something beyond typical friendship. The most direct example comes from the episode License to Till, which aired on the 10th of April 2011. The episode focused on Steve trying to become popular with the cool kids at school, with Roger and Klaus betting on whether Roger could make Steve cool. The episode ends with Steve and Snot kissing. This wasn't accidental mouth contact or a joke setup. The episode concluded with an actual kiss between the two best friends. The show's wiki explicitly notes Steve and Snot kiss in this episode as a significant plot point. That kiss wasn't forgotten or ignored in later episodes. In Award Show, Snot whispered to Steve about their kiss oath meaning nothing. This reference confirmed the kiss happened and that the characters made some kind of agreement about it afterward, though the show plays coy about the details. The fact that they needed an oath about the kiss suggests it meant something significant enough to require discussion between them. In Virtual Insanity, Steve mistakes a comment from a character named Phyllis. When Phyllis mentions that a curly-haired person wanted to dance with someone, Steve immediately assumes she's talking about Snot. The fact that Steve's mind went straight to Snot when hearing about a curly-haired person shows how closely Steve associates romantic or intimate situations with his best friend. The episode, American Stepdad, features a scene where Steve and Snot find themselves holding hands. The show doesn't make a big dramatic moment out of it, which is part of the ongoing joke. These moments happen casually, as if hand-holding between the two boys is normal enough not to warrant explanation. Why can't we be friends? Provided one of the most explicit acknowledgments of the running joke. When Stan confronts Steve about whether he and Snot are gay, Steve denies it while making a limp wrist gesture, a stereotypically effeminate hand movement that undermines his denial. Later in the same episode, Steve looks through a strip of photo booth pictures that show him and Snot kissing, though Snot's hand is positioned to keep their lips from actually touching. The fact that Steve keeps these photos and reminisces over them suggests the moment held meaning for him. In Blonde Ambition, Steve has a fantasy sequence during a hot tub party with girls. In the middle of this fantasy about attractive women, Snot appears wearing a bikini. Fantasy Snot tells Steve that, later, they need to have a serious discussion. The show inserted Snot into Steve's sexual fantasy about women, making the homoerotic subtext impossible to ignore. The fact that even Fantasy Snot wants to have a serious discussion suggests Steve's subconscious knows this situation requires addressing. Moon over Isla Island featured one of the show's most explicit gay jokes involving Steve and Snot. In this episode, Snot removed the doorknob from Stan and Francine's bedroom door. He positioned himself hanging on the back of the door, so his erect penis stuck through the hole where the doorknob used to be. Steve reached for what he thought was the doorknob and grabbed Snot's penis instead. Upon realizing what he was holding, Steve remarked, "I can feel your heart beating." The show didn't cut away immediately. It let that moment sit, with Steve holding Snot's penis long enough to feel his heartbeat through it. The episode also featured Steve tackling Snot to prevent Francine's hand from touching Snot's genitals. When Steve asked why Snot wasn't getting up, Snot explained, "I have to wait for my wrestling rager to go down," meaning he had an erection from wrestling with Steve. The episode repeatedly created situations where Steve and Snot's bodies came into contact in ways that generated sexual tension. The missing kink showed Snot using the gay angle strategically. In this episode, Snot had started dating Steve's sister Haley, but wanted out of the relationship. To escape, Snot pretended to be gay with Barry, their friend. This fake relationship left Barry heartbroken when Snot eventually broke it off. Later, Snot stated he wouldn't be coming out until he was perfect in the episode Haley Smith, SEAL Team 6, suggesting Snot considers his sexuality something he'll eventually need to address publicly. Dr. Klaustus featured Roger in one of his personas, Sergeant Pepper, grabbing and kissing Steve. Steve was visibly romanced by this kiss, showing he responds to male attention. Roger's various personas frequently blur gender lines, and Steve's reaction to being kissed by a male-presenting Roger added another layer to the ongoing joke about Steve's sexuality. The most definitive statement about Steve's future sexuality comes from Roger Passes the Bar, which aired on the 14th of September 2014. In this episode, Steve and his friends tried to seduce their neighbor Charlotte, a registered sex offender who promised to help them lose their virginity in exchange for housework. The boys worked extensively remodeling her house, believing sex was imminent. Instead, Charlotte revealed she was flipping the house and teaching them marketable construction skills. She drove away, leaving them disappointed. Steve then narrated what happened to each of them in the future following this experience. Steve explained, "We learned a lot from Charlotte that summer about what it meant to be a man, and we carried that with us the rest of our lives. Then came the revelations about their futures. Snot joined the army, ended up marrying his commanding officer, Lieutenant Randall Santana. Barry became the poet in residence at Ithaca College and started dating his male students. Steve paused before adding about Toshi. Toshi settled in the Garden City of Kyoto, where he works as a male prostitute. Then Steve said about himself, super gay, also. This wasn't subtle or ambiguous. Steve explicitly stated that in the future, he becomes super gay. The episode suggests that being tricked by Charlotte caused all 4 boys to turn away from women entirely and embrace homosexuality. Whether this was meant to be taken as canon or just a throwaway joke is unclear, but it's the most direct statement the show has made about Steve's sexuality. Another future scene, mentioned in various wiki sources, depicts elderly Steve and Snot as a married couple. In this scene, they discuss having gotten married when they were 21 years old and express regret about it. The show presented this as a glimpse into one possible future where Steve and Snot end up together as life partners, though their marriage is portrayed as unhappy. Steve's relationships with girls throughout the series provide important context. Steve has dated multiple female characters, including Debbie, an overweight goth girl, Gretchen, an 80-year-old woman he genuinely romanced, Lindsay Coolidge, and others. He's constantly pursuing girls and expressing lustful interest in women. Steve is portrayed as desperate to lose his virginity and actively seeks sexual encounters with females. This makes the ongoing gay jokes more complex. Steve displays genuine attraction to women while simultaneously having these repeated homoerotic moments with Snot. The show describes Steve as having bisexual leanings rather than being definitively gay or straight. This language appears in multiple episode descriptions and wiki entries about Steve's character. Bisexuality would explain both Steve's pursuit of women and his intimate moments with Snot. He could be attracted to multiple genders rather than just one. The American Dad Wiki explicitly states, it's an ongoing joke that Steve is gay, specifically with his best friend, Snot. Technically, in a possible future, they're married due to a gag showing them as elderly men, in which they talk about how they married at 21 and regret it. This confirms the show intentionally maintains this running joke across multiple seasons. Snot's own sexuality is equally ambiguous. He pursues women just as aggressively as Steve does, including having an affair with Steve's octogenarian girlfriend Gretchen in the episode Con Hair. Both Steve and Snot agreed that Gretchen was sexy, despite being 80 years old. Snot also shares Steve's interest in older women generally. But like Steve, Snot participates in all the homoerotic moments between them without objection. The show uses several recurring patterns for these jokes. One pattern involves erections. Snot frequently gets erections from everyday situations. The show established that Snot gets wrestling ragers, erections from pillow fights, erections from airplanes, and erections from various physical activities. When these erections happen around Steve, the show creates sexual tension between the characters. Another pattern involves physical contact that lingers longer than typical male friendships. The hand-holding, the kiss, the penis-grabbing incident, the photo booth pictures. All of these involve Steve and Snot's bodies coming into contact in ways the show frames as potentially romantic or sexual rather than purely platonic. The show also uses the pattern of Steve's subconscious revealing things. His fantasy and blonde ambition, inserting Snot in a bikini, shows Steve's mind goes to Snot even during sexual fantasies about women. His immediate association of curly-haired person with Snot in a romantic context shows how closely Steve links Snot with intimate situations. Klaus, the family's goldfish who used to be a German man, occasionally comments on Steve's behavior. At one point, Klaus asks Steve if he's allergic to vaginas, mocking Steve's difficulties with women. Characters within the show notice and comment on Steve's effeminate mannerisms and complicated relationship with his sexuality. Roger, the pansexual alien living with the Smiths, has his own complicated dynamic with Steve. They're described as having a love-hate brotherly relationship, but Roger has kissed Steve in various personas and created sexual tension with him. Roger's complete comfort with all forms of sexuality creates an environment where Steve's sexual confusion can play out without judgment. The running joke serves multiple purposes in the show. It provides ongoing comedy through awkward situations between the boys. It satirizes teenage male friendships and the thin line between bros being bros and actual romantic feelings. It comments on sexuality being more fluid than rigid categories suggest, and it creates dramatic irony. The audience sees these repeated moments while most characters in the show remain oblivious. American Dad never definitively resolves Steve's sexuality. He remains in a state of ambiguity where he could be straight, gay, bisexual, or still figuring things out. The show seems to intentionally maintain this ambiguity as part of the ongoing joke rather than giving Steve a clear coming-out moment or definitive statement. This allows the show to continue mining comedy from the situation across multiple seasons. The relationship between Steve and Snot represents one of American Dad's longest-running character dynamics. Their friendship dates back to kindergarten, as shown in the episode Mom Sauce, where they met at Reagan Elementary School. They've been best friends for essentially their entire lives, which adds depth to all the homoerotic moments. These aren't new feelings suddenly appearing, but rather an undercurrent that's potentially existed throughout their entire friendship. Whether the ongoing joke will ever become something more explicit remains to be seen. For now, American Dad maintains Steve and Snot's relationship in a space of deliberate ambiguity, where straight audiences can read it as typical teenage male bonding, while queer audiences can see clear homoerotic subtext. The show walks this line intentionally, keeping the joke ongoing, rather than resolving it in any particular direction. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Next up, Greg and Terry's introduction as one of TV's first openly gay animated couples. Threat Levels is the second episode of American Dad, airing on the 1st of May 2005, just 1 week after the show premiered. This episode introduced Greg Corbin and Terry Bates, who would become American Dad's central gay couple and recurring characters throughout the series. Their introduction established one of the show's longest-running jokes, Stan Smith's complete obliviousness to the fact that his neighbors are a gay couple living together. The episode opens with the Channel 3 Noon Report, with anchor partners Greg Corbin and Terry Bates. News that's independent, proud, and unashamed. This opening line does multiple things at once. First, it establishes Greg and Terry as professional news anchors working together. Second, the phrase independent, proud, and unashamed works as both a description of their journalistic integrity and a subtle nod to LGBTQ+ pride language. The show was signaling Greg and Terry's sexuality from their very first words on screen. During their news broadcast, Terry delivers a report about threat levels being lowered. He says, "Good news today, Greg. The threat level has been lowered, prompting reductions in security. The threat level is now blue, same as my handsome co-anchor's eyes." Terry openly compliments Greg's blue eyes on live television, calling him handsome. This is clearly flirtatious behavior between the two co-anchors. Greg responds somewhat bashfully, "Come on now, learn to take a compliment. Now, how hard is that?" This exchange established the dynamic between Greg and Terry. Terry is comfortable expressing affection and admiration for Greg publicly, even during their professional news broadcast. Greg is a bit more reserved but accepts the compliments with gentle teasing. Their on-air chemistry shows they're comfortable together in a way that goes beyond typical co-workers. The main plot of Threat Levels involves Stan accidentally bringing home the wrong thermos from work. The thermos contains hazardous material that makes the family believe they've been exposed to a deadly virus and only have 24 hours to live. After this false alarm, Francine realizes she's accomplished very little with her life and decides to become a real estate agent. She becomes incredibly successful and starts making more money than Stan, which threatens his sense of masculinity. Stan responds by creating an underground homeless fighting ring to prove his manhood. But parallel to this main storyline, the episode introduces Greg and Terry as the Smiths' new neighbors. Stan comes home to find moving trucks across the street. He immediately starts complaining to Francine about the new neighbors. Stan says, "They're just the movers. The new owners are Greg and Terry. We don't want their kind in this neighborhood." Francine tells Stan he's overreacting and asks what he means. Stan's response reveals the joke. "Reporters." "That's right, Francine. Members of the liberal media." Stan's objection to Greg and Terry has nothing to do with their sexuality. He doesn't want journalists living in his conservative neighborhood because he views all reporters as liberal propagandists. Francine tries to reason with Stan, pointing out that not all journalists are bad and asking if he likes Brit Hume. Stan admits, "You know damn well I like Brit Hume," showing he can appreciate individual reporters even if he distrusts the media generally. Francine tells Stan to just give Greg and Terry a chance. Stan reluctantly agrees. "All right, but if he's cut off mid-sentence by something happening." The transcript indicates, "What the hell?" Dimmer switch. Greg has apparently just installed or adjusted a dimmer switch, and someone, likely Greg, apologizes saying, "I'm sorry." Too fabulous? This moment shows Greg's personality. He decorates with style and flair, using language like "too fabulous" that has stereotypically gay associations. The genius of this introduction is that the show makes Greg and Terry's sexuality completely obvious to the audience, while keeping Stan completely oblivious. Terry complimenting Greg's eyes on live television, their body language as domestic partners, Greg's decorating choices, their mannerisms. All of these things signal to viewers that Greg and Terry are a gay couple. But Stan, consumed by his prejudice against liberal journalists, doesn't notice any of it. This creates what TV Tropes describes as a transparent closet, when characters are so obviously gay that their closeted status becomes comical because everyone except certain oblivious characters can tell. Stan's blindness to Greg and Terry's relationship becomes an ongoing gag throughout early seasons. He considers them nice young men that just happen to live together without questioning why two single men would choose to share a home. The episode's Parents Guide on IMDb notes that Greg and Terry talk about Stan's butt at some point during the episode, showing that beyond their on-air flirtation, they also comment on other men's physical attributes. This detail reinforces their sexuality while maintaining the comedy of Stan not picking up on these signals. Greg Corbin is voiced by Seth MacFarlane, the show's creator, who also voices Stan Smith and Roger. This casting choice is interesting because it means MacFarlane voices both the homophobic CIA agent and one of the gay characters challenging Stan's worldview. Terry Bates is voiced by Mike Barker, one of the show's executive producers. Having the show's creator's voice, these characters demonstrated their commitment to making Greg and Terry fully realized recurring characters rather than one-off stereotypes. The character descriptions establish several key facts about Greg and Terry. They work together as co-anchors at Channel 3 News. They are domestic partners, meaning they live together in a committed relationship. They own a French bulldog named Heath Ledger, a reference to the actor who starred in Brokeback Mountain, the 2005 film about a gay relationship between two cowboys. Naming their dog after Heath Ledger is another subtle gay culture reference that went over Stan's head. Terry is described as a Democrat with blonde hair. This political affiliation matters in the context of the show because Stan is an ultra-conservative Republican. Terry and Stan are political opposites, which adds another layer to their neighborly relationship. Greg's political views aren't specified in early descriptions, but he works in journalism, which Stan automatically associates with liberal politics. The show established Greg and Terry as Stan's neighbors, meaning they lived directly across the street from the Smith family. This proximity ensured they would appear regularly throughout the series. Unlike some shows that introduce gay characters in special episodes and then forget about them, American Dad made Greg and Terry part of the regular neighborhood landscape. Greg and Terry's introduction in 2005 was significant for American television. While gay characters had appeared on sitcoms before, having an openly gay couple as recurring neighbors in an animated series was relatively progressive. The show didn't treat their relationship as something shocking or requiring explanation. They simply existed as a committed couple who happened to work together and live together. The comedy in Threat Levels doesn't come from mocking Greg and Terry for being gay. Instead, the joke is on Stan for being so consumed by his other prejudices against journalists that he completely misses the obvious signs of their relationship. The show satirizes Stan's narrow-mindedness while presenting Greg and Terry as normal, functional adults whose sexuality is just one aspect of their characters. Stan's obliviousness would continue for several seasons. In later episodes, Greg and Terry would have conversations in front of Stan about their relationship, hold hands, display couple behavior, and Stan still wouldn't understand they were together. The show milked this joke extensively, showing Stan rationalizing away every obvious sign. If they were holding hands, Stan assumed they were just very good friends. If they seemed romantically interested in each other, Stan thought they had a strong professional partnership. The phrase, independent, proud, and unashamed, from their news broadcast opening deserves closer examination. In LGBTQ+ culture, pride is a fundamental concept, being proud of who you are despite societal prejudice. Unashamed similarly carries weight for a community that has historically been shamed for their sexuality. By having these words introduce Greg and Terry's first appearance, the show was making a statement. These characters would be portrayed with dignity, not as objects of ridicule. Terry's on-air flirtation with Greg also established something important. They weren't hiding their relationship from colleagues or the public. They worked together on live television, and Terry felt comfortable complimenting Greg's appearance during broadcasts. This suggested they were out professionally and weren't keeping their relationship secret from anyone except perhaps Terry's father, a plot point explored in later episodes. The show creators made deliberate choices about how to present Greg and Terry. They weren't written as stereotypically flamboyant characters defined entirely by their sexuality. They had careers as journalists, personalities beyond being gay, and concerns about things like neighborhood dynamics and professional credibility. Yes, Greg used words like fabulous and cared about interior decorating, but these traits were presented as individual characteristics rather than his entire personality. By introducing Greg and Terry in only the second episode of the series, American Dad established that LGBTQ+ characters would be part of the show's fabric from the beginning. This wasn't a very special episode, bringing in gay characters to teach a lesson before sending them away. Greg and Terry were Langley Falls residents, community members, and eventually friends, despite Stan's initial resistance to journalists in the neighborhood. The episode aired in 2005, the same year that states like Massachusetts had only recently legalized same-sex marriage, while most of the country still banned it. Brokeback Mountain was released in 2005 and became a cultural phenomenon for its portrayal of a gay relationship. American Dad introduced Greg and Terry into this cultural moment, presenting a gay couple as normal neighbors who happened to work in news media. Stan's line, "We don't want their kind in this neighborhood," is particularly loaded. The phrase, "their kind," has historically been used as discriminatory language against marginalized groups. The show sets up audience expectations that Stan is being homophobic, then reveals he's actually being anti-journalist. This bait and switch works because it makes the audience examine their own assumptions while also showing that Stan has multiple layers of prejudice to work through. Francine's role as the voice of reason is important here. She tells Stan he's overreacting and encourages him to give Greg and Terry a chance. Throughout the series, Francine often serves as the moral center who pushes Stan to be more accepting and open-minded. Her immediate defense of the new neighbors, before even knowing they're journalists, shows her more tolerant worldview. The episode doesn't make Greg and Terry's relationship a plot point or problem to solve. They simply exist as background characters while the main story focuses on Francine's real estate career and Stan's masculinity crisis. This normalization of their presence is itself significant. They don't need a coming out story or acceptance arc in their introduction. They're already out, already together, and already established in their community. Greg and Terry would go on to appear in numerous episodes throughout American Dad's run. They'd have storylines about wanting to adopt a child, Terry coming out to his homophobic father, relationship troubles, and various neighborhood activities. Their introduction in Threat Levels laid the groundwork for all these future stories by establishing them as complex characters with careers, personalities, and a committed relationship. The episode received generally positive reviews, with critics noting the show's willingness to tackle social issues through Stan's character. By making Stan ignorant about multiple things simultaneously, gay relationships, gender equality in marriage, how to treat homeless people, the show established its satirical approach to conservative ideology. Stan would gradually learn and grow throughout the series, with Greg and Terry playing a role in that evolution. Threat Levels demonstrates American Dad's approach to LGBTQ+ representation, present gay characters as fully realized people with lives beyond their sexuality, use humor to expose prejudice rather than mock marginalized groups, and integrate these characters into the ongoing world of the show rather than treating them as special guests. Greg and Terry's introduction set the template for how the show would handle gay characters throughout its run. The fact that Stan doesn't realize Greg and Terry are gay in their introduction episode becomes more remarkable the more you think about it. Two men, living together, working together, flirting on air, decorating together, and referring to each other as partners, and Stan sees only journalists. His selective blindness is the joke, not their relationship. The show trusts its audience to understand what Stan cannot. Greg and Terry are a couple, and there's nothing wrong with that. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to Linda saving Francine with a kiss. When Francine Smith gets herself trapped by a murderous cult of cheating housewives, the solution to her problem arrives in the most unexpected form possible. Her neighbor Linda Mamari swoops in to save her life with a passionate kiss that tricks the ladybugs into thinking Francine's affair is with another woman. That split second of same-sex intimacy becomes the dramatic climax of the American Dad episode Not Particularly Desperate Housewife, which aired on the 18th of December 2005 during the show's first season. Written by Dan Weber and directed by Ron Huart, Anthony Leoi, and Brent Woods, this 16th episode of Season 1 packs a genuinely unexpected queer moment into what starts as a straightforward satire of suburban desperation and social climbing. The episode opens with Francine trapped in the suffocating routine of her life with Stan Smith, the control freak CIA agent who dictates everything from dinner schedules to social activities. When Francine accidentally makes lasagna on Tuesday instead of Thursday, Stan cancels the entire meal because the scheduling is wrong. This rigid structure extends to Francine's friendships too. Every Wednesday night means jigsaw puzzles with her neighbor, Linda Mamari, a routine that feels more like a prison sentence than genuine connection. Francine wants excitement, glamour, something beyond the predictable patterns that define her suburban existence. She finds what looks like the answer when she spots the ladybugs at Red State Grocery. The ladybugs represent everything Francine thinks she wants. They walk in slow motion to the song Connection by Elastica, moving through the supermarket like celebrities on a red carpet. The three main members visible to Francine are Christy White, played by guest star Molly Shannon, Katie, played by Sandra Oh, and Casey, played by Paget Brewster. All three women wear distinctive ladybug brooches that mark them as members of this exclusive club. They radiate confidence, independence, and the kind of carefree lifestyle that Francine can only dream about. To Francine, these women have what she describes as a fast lane lifestyle and a slow motion walk, the perfect combination of excitement and control that her own life completely lacks. Francine's first encounter with the ladybugs happens in the grocery store parking lot, but not the way she planned. A woman named Anne Fleming has been crushed to death by a train of shopping carts. The gruesome scene draws a crowd, and Francine takes in the dead woman's dog, a small, effeminate poodle named Fussy. At the time, Francine has no idea that Anne Fleming was murdered by the very same ladybugs she wants to impress. The organization kills members who try to leave or who pose a threat to their secrets, using shopping cart executions as their signature method. Anne Fleming's death should serve as a warning about the dangers of this social circle, but Francine is too focused on her own desires to recognize the red flags literally scattered across the parking lot pavement. Determined to join the ladybugs, Francine skips her regular Wednesday night jigsaw puzzle session with Linda Mamari to attend an art opening at a nightclub called Boo, where the ladybugs will be present. Linda expresses disappointment that Francine is breaking their standing tradition, but Francine brushes off her friend's feelings in pursuit of the glamorous life she thinks the ladybugs can provide. At the art gallery, a series of accidents and misunderstandings lead the ladybugs to believe something that isn't true. When Francine ends up in a janitor's closet with the valet, the ladybugs see this as evidence that she's having an affair with a younger man. This supposed infidelity becomes Francine's golden ticket into the organization because the ladybugs aren't just a social club for bored housewives. They're specifically a group of women who cheat on their husbands and protect each other's secrets through mutual blackmail and murder when necessary. Francine receives her ladybug brooch and becomes an official member, but she faces an immediate problem. She's not actually having an affair, meaning she has to fake the entire relationship to maintain her position in the group. Francine pretends to write love letters to her imaginary boyfriend and makes up stories about their encounters, but the ladybugs eventually demand to meet this mysterious lover in person. When Francine realizes she can't produce an actual person and refuses to genuinely cheat on Stan, she tries to leave the organization. The ladybugs inform her that leaving isn't an option because she knows too many secrets about their affairs. Without dirt on Francine to use as counter-blackmail, the group can't risk letting her walk away with information that could destroy them all. Christy White tells Francine they wouldn't want her to end up like Anne Fleming, which prompts Francine to do research at the library. She discovers that Anne Fleming, the woman killed by shopping carts in the parking lot, was the Ladybug's previous murder victim. The organization has now set their sights on Francine. They demonstrate their reach by sabotaging things in her home, replacing her cumin with coriander and burning one of Stan's shirts. The message is clear. Nearly every woman in Langley Falls is secretly a member of the Ladybugs, giving the organization access to homes, businesses, and public spaces throughout the entire town. Francine can't escape them, and they can get to her or her family at any moment. Stan dismisses Francine's fears when she finally tells him the truth about the cult of murderous housewives trying to kill her. He makes a reference to how before the 11th of September, 2001, he would have asked follow-up questions or demanded proof, but the post-9/11 world has made him accept extreme scenarios without skepticism. This darkly comic moment reflects how American Dad uses Stan's paranoid CIA mindset to satirize post-terrorist attack American culture. Stan's willingness to immediately believe in suburban murder cults says more about his worldview than about the actual threat Francine faces, even though in this case, the threat happens to be completely real. The Ladybugs corner Francine in the Red State grocery parking lot, the same location where they killed Anne Fleming. A line of shopping carts stands ready to crush Francine to death in their signature execution method. The women close in on their target, prepared to add another murder to their list of crimes. Francine appears doomed, trapped with no escape route, and no allies coming to rescue her. Then, Linda Mamari shows up, asking to say goodbye to Francine before the execution. What happens next changes everything. Linda Mamari, played by voice actress Megan Price, leans in and kisses Francine directly on the mouth. The kiss isn't a quick peck on the cheek or an obviously staged moment. Linda kisses Francine passionately, holding the contact long enough that the watching Ladybugs accept it as genuine proof of romantic involvement. The murder cult members see this display of same-sex affection and immediately conclude that Francine's secret affair is with another woman, specifically with Linda herself. This revelation satisfies their requirement for mutual blackmail material. If Francine exposes the Ladybug's affairs, they can expose her supposed lesbian relationship, which in their minds gives them the leverage they need to ensure her silence. With this new understanding in place, the Ladybugs abandon their execution plans and leave Francine alive with a warning to keep their secrets safe. After the Ladybugs disperse, Francine thanks Linda for the quick thinking that saved her life. She specifically praises the brilliance of the fake lesbian kiss strategy, calling it a great idea that fooled the murderous housewives into believing they had blackmail material. Linda's response provides the episode's most significant moment of queer subtext. When Francine describes the kiss as fake, Linda pauses before responding with a question. Fake? Fake, Linda asks, her tone suggesting confusion or disappointment. Then, she catches herself and agrees. Oh, yeah, of course, fake. The hesitation and awkward delivery make it clear that for Linda, the kiss wasn't fake at all. She used the life or death situation as an opportunity to act on genuine feelings for Francine that she otherwise keeps hidden. Linda then explains that she knew to arrive at the grocery store at that exact moment because it's Wednesday, their regular grocery shopping day. The routine that Francine found so boring and suffocating literally saves her life. If Francine hadn't established this predictable pattern with Linda, her neighbor wouldn't have shown up at precisely the right moment to intervene in the execution. Francine recognizes this irony immediately, telling Linda that she thought her boring routine was killing her, but it ended up saving her life instead. The episode's moral message lands without being heavy-handed. Francine learned that the excitement she craved from the Ladybugs came with deadly consequences, while the supposedly dull stability of her friendship with Linda proved far more valuable than glamorous slow-motion walks through grocery stores. The Linda character appears in the very first season of American Dad in an earlier episode titled Homeland Insecurity. In that episode, Linda and her husband Bob Mamari move to Langley Falls, and Stan immediately suspects them of being terrorists because of their Iranian heritage. Stan stalks the couple relentlessly, convinced they're running a sleeper cell operation. When Francine apologizes to Linda for Stan's racist behavior, Linda says she doesn't mind because Stan is still more considerate than most African Americans, a line that establishes Linda's own complicated relationship with prejudice and stereotypes. Despite this rocky introduction, Francine and Linda develop a genuine friendship that continues throughout the series. The American Dad Wiki explicitly notes that Linda is likely bisexual or lesbian based on her apparent crush on Francine and the fact that she and her husband Bob have little to no sexual relations in their marriage. The not particularly Desperate Housewife episode references the ABC television drama Desperate Housewives in its title, a show that premiered on the 3rd of October 2004, just over a year before this American Dad episode aired. Created by Mark Cherry, Desperate Housewives followed the lives of women living on Wisteria Lane in the fictional town of Fairview. The show became a massive cultural phenomenon, attracting over 21 million viewers for its pilot episode and winning multiple Emmy, Golden Globe, and Screen Actors Guild Awards during its 8th season, run from 2004 to 2012. American Dad's decision to parody Desperate Housewives makes sense given the enormous popularity of the source material and the shared theme of secrets lurking beneath suburban respectability. Where Desperate Housewives played its mysteries relatively straight with dramatic consequences, American Dad exaggerates the concept into absurdist comedy with a literal murder cult of cheating wives. The episode also features a secondary subplot where Stan befriends the dog Fussy that Francine rescued from Anne Fleming's murder scene. Stan initially rejects Fussy because the dog seems too effeminate for the Smith household, declaring that Smiths have manly dogs and that Fussy couldn't be any more effeminate, even if it had 20 vaginas. The irony of Stan using both femininity and excessive femaleness as insults in the same sentence captures his contradictory views on gender. However, after Fussy repeatedly mauls Roger the alien, Stan decides the dog has enough aggressive masculinity to earn his respect. This B-plot mirrors the main story's themes about appearances versus reality and how people misjudge situations based on superficial characteristics. The newspaper headline gag that appears in the opening credits of this episode reads, "Clever bumper sticker ends abortion debate," continuing American Dad's tradition of satirizing political and social issues through absurdist joke headlines. Additionally, a character named Katie in the episode has a Japanese music sting that plays whenever she does anything, which serves as a parody of the Latin music sting used on Desperate Housewives. These small details demonstrate how thoroughly the episode commits to its satire of the source material while still telling its own distinct story. The voice cast for this episode includes the regular American Dad performers, with Seth MacFarlane voicing Stan Smith, Wendy Schaal as Francine Smith, Scott Grimes as Steve Smith, and Rachel MacFarlane as Haley Smith. The Ladybugs bring significant star power with Molly Shannon, Sandra Oh, and Paget Brewster all contributing guest performances as the murderous housewives. These three actresses were all well established in television comedy by 2005, with Shannon famous for her work on Saturday Night Live, Oh gaining recognition from shows like Grey's Anatomy, and Brewster, known for Criminal Minds and various comedy roles. Their involvement adds extra weight to the Ladybugs, making these characters feel like legitimate threats rather than throwaway antagonists. Dan Weber, who wrote this episode, brought significant animation experience to American Dad. Before writing Not Particularly Desperate Housewife, Weber had worked on Futurama, Daria, and The Golden Girls, building a reputation for smart comedy that mixed satire with genuine emotional moments. He would later win an Emmy Award in 2011 for Outstanding Animated Program for his work on Futurama. His script for this episode balances multiple tones effectively, moving from domestic comedy to thriller elements to the genuinely sweet moment of Linda saving Francine's life, all while maintaining the show's signature irreverent humor. The Linda and Francine kiss represents one of the earliest examples of same-sex intimacy in American Dad's first season. While the show would later feature the recurring gay couple of Terry and Greg as neighbors to the Smith family, and would explore LGBT themes more directly in later seasons like LGB Steve, where characters join an all-female lesbian roller derby team. This first season kiss arrives before the show fully committed to inclusive representation. The fact that the kiss happens as a life-saving measure rather than a romantic culmination gives the show some plausible deniability about depicting queer affection, but Linda's reaction makes the subtext impossible to ignore. She has real romantic feelings for Francine that she masks under the excuse of emergency improvisation. The episode positions Linda's sexuality as something hidden from most characters but visible to the audience. Francine remains oblivious to Linda's true feelings, interpreting the kiss exactly the way Linda claims it was meant, as a clever fake-out designed to fool the ladybugs. Stan never learns about the kiss at all. The other residents of Langley Falls see Linda as a married woman in a heterosexual relationship with Bob Mamari. Only the audience gets the full context through Linda's dialogue and delivery, understanding that this moment of same-sex contact carried genuine emotional weight for at least one participant. This creates a layer of dramatic irony, where viewers know more than the characters, a common technique in comedy, but one that takes on additional significance when dealing with closeted queer identity. The fact that Linda's potential queerness never becomes a major plot point or source of conflict in the series demonstrates both progress and limitation in early 2000s television representation. On one hand, the show doesn't punish Linda for her feelings, or turn her sexuality into a problem that needs solving. She remains Francine's friend, continues appearing in episodes, and faces no negative consequences for kissing another woman. On the other hand, the show also doesn't validate or explore Linda's feelings in any meaningful way. After this episode, her attraction to Francine becomes an occasionally referenced joke rather than a developed character trait. The kiss saves Francine's life and provides a clever resolution to the Ladybug's plot, but it doesn't lead to any deeper examination of Linda's interior life or the challenges of being a potentially queer woman in a conservative suburban environment. The shopping cart execution method that the Ladybugs use deserves recognition for its dark creativity. American Dad frequently employs over-the-top violence for comedic effect, but the shopping cart murder specifically ties into the suburban setting and consumer culture themes. The Ladybugs kill Anne Fleming and attempt to kill Francine in a grocery store parking lot, a space that represents domestic duty and the repetitive routines of housewife life. The weapon is shopping carts, objects associated with purchasing food and household supplies. By weaponizing these mundane aspects of suburban existence, the show suggests that the real danger in Francine's world comes not from external threats, but from the toxic dynamics within her own community. The women who seem to offer friendship and excitement are actually predators who maintain their lifestyle through violence and intimidation. When the episode aired on the 18th of December 2005, American Dad was still finding its identity as a series distinct from Family Guy, Seth MacFarlane's other animated sitcom. Both shows featured MacFarlane's voice work and shared similar animation styles, but American Dad positioned itself as more focused on satire of post-9/11 American politics and culture. Episodes like Not Particularly Desperate Housewife demonstrated the show's ability to parody current pop culture phenomena while telling character-driven stories with real stakes. Francine's journey from boredom to terror to appreciation for what she already had provides genuine character growth, something that differentiated American Dad from more purely joke-focused animated comedies. The 3,000-word length of this analysis allows for examination of how a single moment, Linda's kiss, functions within multiple contexts simultaneously. As a plot device, the kiss solves Francine's immediate problem by providing the blackmail material the Ladybugs require. As character development, it reveals Linda's hidden feelings and adds complexity to what could have been a one-note supporting character. As representation, it offers one of the few examples of woman-on-woman intimacy in the show's early seasons, even if that intimacy comes with significant asterisks and limitations. As comedy, it provides an unexpected twist on the typical rescue scene while adding layers of meaning to Linda's awkward dialogue afterward. The episode's resolution brings Francine back to appreciation for the boring routine she tried to escape. She returns to jigsaw puzzles with Linda on Wednesday nights and accepts Stan's rigid scheduling without complaint, at least temporarily. The excitement of the Ladybugs proved hollow and dangerous, while the stability of her existing relationships, particularly with Linda, demonstrated its value through concrete life-saving action. This conservative conclusion, where the housewife learns to appreciate her traditional role, exists in tension with the subversive elements of the kiss itself. Francine may return to her old life, but Linda's feelings and the memory of that passionate kiss remain as evidence that suburban normalcy contains desires and identities that can't be fully contained by white picket fences and grocery store routines. Not Particularly Desperate Housewife stands as a notable episode in American Dad's first season for successfully parodying a cultural phenomenon, telling a complete story with real consequences, and sneaking in a genuinely meaningful queer moment disguised as a plot convenience. Linda Mamari saves Francine Smith with a kiss that means more to the saver than the saved, and that imbalance of emotion and awareness creates the kind of bittersweet undertone that elevates comedy into something approaching genuine poignancy. The ladybugs may be defeated, and Francine may be safe, but Linda returns to her closeted existence, her real feelings masked as performance, her love dressed up as clever improvisation. In a show built on exaggeration and satire, that small moment of authentic emotion, quickly covered and never fully acknowledged, might be the most quietly radical element of the entire episode. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have Stan and Roger skating as a same-sex pairs team. Stan Smith spends 20 consecutive winters abandoning his wife to pursue a secret passion that fills him with shame. When Francine finally discovers the truth, she finds her hyper-masculine CIA agent husband gliding across a frozen pond in a figure skating costume, performing graceful routines to disco music. The revelation that Stan is a closet figure skater becomes the central conflict of Ice and Men, an American Dad episode that aired on the 26th of November, 2006, during the show's second season. Written by Brian Boyle and directed by John Aoshima, with supervising directors Ron Hughart and Anthony Leoy, this seventh episode of Season 2 transforms competitive figure skating into a battlefield where Stan's need to win clashes with his marriage, ultimately leading him to dump Francine as his skating partner and form a same-sex pairs team with Roger the Alien. What follows is a surprisingly camp performance that puts Stan and Roger into the traditionally heterosexual framework of pairs figure skating, creating one of the show's earliest sustained explorations of gender performance and athletic masculinity. The episode begins in the year 2045, where an elderly Klaus, somehow returned to human form, tells his grandson a bedtime story about Stan Smith and his winter secret. This framing device immediately positions the narrative as a cautionary tale or fable, adding distance and importance to what could otherwise be dismissed as just another wacky American Dad plot. The grandson requests a story about how people used to believe in the Bible, establishing the far future setting where religious faith has apparently become as quaint as Stan's figure skating obsession will seem by the story's end. Klaus settles in to narrate Stan's tale, bringing the audience back to the present-day Langley Falls, where the first snowflake of winter triggers Stan's annual transformation. Every winter, from the first snowflake to the final thaw, Stan becomes aloof, withdrawn, and mysterious. He disappears for entire days and nights without explanation, leaving Francine depressed and confused about where her husband goes. When Stan stumbles home in the middle of the night with blood dripping from his ankle, Francine begs to know his secret, but he refuses to share it. The pattern has repeated for 20 years, 2 full decades of winters, where Stan abandons his family for mysterious solo activities that he guards more carefully than his CIA classified operations. Francine decides she can no longer tolerate the annual cycle of abandonment and commits to discovering where Stan goes when winter arrives. Francine pretends to sleep and watches Stan wake up and sneak into the bathroom. She follows him and discovers that the bathtub contains a secret elevator leading down into an elaborate underground passage system. The tunnel features booby traps, including hidden spikes emerging from walls that still bear the skeleton of a previous victim. Francine encounters the remains of Maria, the Smith family's former maid, who Francine had assumed quit without notice, but who actually fell victim to Stan's security measures. A guard named Clifford, hired by Stan to protect the passage, has been living underground for so long that Stan owes him approximately $42,000 in back wages. Clifford mentions his girlfriend wants him to address the payment situation so they can finally move out of the tunnel and get their own place together. These details establish that Stan's secret is so important to him that he built an entire hidden infrastructure, complete with deadly traps and underpaid security, to protect it. The passage leads to the surface where Francine discovers Stan on a picturesque frozen pond. He wears a white figure skating outfit with a purple cape, the exact opposite of his usual conservative CIA attire. Stan performs an elegant routine to the song Gloria by Laura Branigan, a disco anthem that immediately codes his secret activity as tied to traditionally feminine or queer cultural spaces. Figure skating, with its emphasis on grace, artistry, and costume design, occupies an ambiguous position in American sports culture. It's celebrated during Olympic years but often mocked or dismissed as effeminate during off years, especially for male skaters who face constant scrutiny about their masculinity and sexuality. Stan's horror at being discovered figure skating stems not just from personal embarrassment, but from the activity's associations with everything his hyper-masculine CIA persona stands against. When Francine confronts Stan about his 20-year secret, he responds with a question that reveals how deeply ashamed he feels. How can you tell someone you love, you're a monster? Stan genuinely believes his passion for figure skating makes him a monster in his wife's eyes, that the graceful athletic activity somehow transforms him into something less than human. This extreme reaction demonstrates how rigid gender expectations damage men who dare to pursue interests coded as feminine. Stan has built an entire secret life complete with underground tunnels and hired guards, rather than simply tell his wife he enjoys figure skating. The absurdity of the situation highlights the very real pressure men face to conform to narrow definitions of acceptable masculine behavior. Stan explains his backstory to Francine. Many years ago, he was a competitive figure skater whose extreme competitiveness led to disaster. During a regional event, his partner got injured, but Stan's obsession with winning overpowered his concern for her safety. He continued their routine despite her injury, and then drove across the entire country with her to protest their poor score rather than take her to the hospital. His partner presumably suffered terrible consequences from the delayed medical care, and Stan retreated from competitive pairs, skating, choosing to skate alone on his secret frozen pond rather than risk hurting another partner. This backstory establishes Stan's character flaw, his inability to prioritize human relationships over winning, while also explaining why he fears skating with others. Francine responds with remarkable support and understanding. Rather than mocking Stan for his supposedly unmasculine hobby, she encourages him to embrace figure skating openly and suggests they skate together as a couple. This represents exactly the kind of accepting partnership Stan needs, someone who can help him integrate his passion into his public life rather than hiding it away. Stan begins training Francine, and for a brief period, they're happier than they've been in years. Stan skips through the kitchen with genuine joy, finally able to share his winter obsession with his wife. Francine feels connected to her husband again after 20 years of seasonal abandonment. The episode seems positioned for a heartwarming resolution where Stan learns to value his marriage more than competitive success. Then Francine enters them in a local skating competition, and Stan's competitive nature immediately resurfaces. He tells Roger a darker truth he hadn't shared with Francine. After his former partner got injured during their routine, Stan not only finished the performance and drove across the country to protest the score, but he also deliberately prioritized competition over her medical emergency, essentially choosing a skating score over another human's well-being. This confession positions Stan as someone whose competitive drive borders on sociopathic, someone capable of incredible cruelty when winning becomes his focus. Roger learns that the competition's prize is a set of wigs, exactly the kind of costume accessories Roger obsessively collects. Roger wants those wigs badly enough to manipulate Stan into competing despite his reservations. Roger convinces Stan that he and Francine should participate in the contest, playing on Stan's guilt about abandoning Francine while also promising to help them win. Stan begins training Francine with increasing intensity, his supportive attitude transforming into harsh criticism. He demands she execute complex footwork sequences like the RBO Choctaw perfectly on the first try, a technical move going from the right outer edge skating backward to the left inner edge skating forward. When Francine struggles, Roger cruelly comments that she's as graceful as a frozen turd, reinforcing Stan's growing dissatisfaction with his wife's skating ability. Roger watches videotapes of professional skating pairs with Stan, specifically mentioning real-world skating duo Anita Hartshorn and Frank Swiding performing their Mustang Sally routine in Berlin. This reference to actual figure skaters grounds the episode in the real world of competitive pairs skating, while also highlighting the contrast between professional partnerships and Stan's increasingly toxic approach to competition. When Stan asks Roger where he learned to skate so well, Roger replies that Stan would know if he bothered to read Roger's MySpace page. This throwaway joke dates the episode to 2006, when MySpace was still culturally relevant, but it also reveals that Roger's skating ability, like many of his skills, comes from his alien background. Roger mentions earlier that his home planet has figure skating, and that snow reminds him of home, suggesting that skating is actually part of Roger's cultural heritage rather than an acquired human skill. During practice, Stan spots a beautiful blonde woman skating across the rink with exceptional talent. When she glides closer, Stan realizes it's Roger wearing a blonde wig and apparently female skating attire. Roger proves to be a far superior skater to Francine, executing complicated moves with ease and demonstrating the kind of competitive excellence Stan craves. Faced with the choice between skating with his loyal wife or skating with a technically superior partner who happens to be a male alien dressed as a woman, Stan immediately dumps Francine and teams up with Roger. This decision destroys Francine emotionally and represents the exact pattern that ruined Stan's previous skating partnership, proving he learned nothing from his past mistakes. Stan and Roger practice relentlessly as a same-sex pair, though Roger's wig and feminine presentation allow them to pass as a traditional male-female pairs team to outside observers. The episode never explicitly draws attention to the fact that Stan is skating with another male, instead focusing on the partnership's competitive potential and Roger's obsession with winning the wig prize. However, the subtext remains clear. Stan forms an intense athletic partnership with Roger that requires physical intimacy, coordinated movements, and the kind of trust typically associated with romantic couples in pairs figure skating. Traditional pairs skating is built on the heterosexual romance narrative, with male skaters supporting and lifting their female partners in moves that mirror romantic gestures. By putting two male-presenting characters into this framework, even with Roger's feminine disguise, the episode queers the entire structure of competitive pairs skating. Roger's passion for winning proves even more intense than Stan's own competitive drive. He yells at Stan during practice, asking if Stan knows the competition is tomorrow and criticizing his technique. Roger accuses Stan of skating like a wiener and says it looks like he has mad Salchow disease, referencing the Salchow jump, one of figure skating's fundamental techniques. Roger pushes Stan harder than Stan ever pushed Francine, establishing a partnership built on mutual obsession with victory rather than emotional connection or enjoyment of the sport. This mirrors toxic coaching relationships and suggests that Stan and Roger's same-sex partnership is actually less healthy than Stan's mixed-sex partnership with Francine, precisely because it prioritizes winning over human connection. At the competition, other skaters perform their routines while Stan and Roger wait backstage for their turn. An inept elderly couple takes the ice and performs a clumsy routine that earns them a low score. However, despite their technical failures, the elderly couple radiates genuine happiness and enjoyment of each other's company. They hold hands, smile at one another, and celebrate their participation, regardless of the judge's assessment. This couple represents everything Stan's partnerships lack: the ability to find joy in the activity itself, rather than obsessing over competitive outcomes. Watching them triggers Stan's conscience and makes him realize he should be skating with Francine, the person he actually loves, rather than chasing victory with Roger. Stan abandons Roger at the competition, leaving him alone on the ice to face the crowd's judgment. Roger stands in his blonde wig and skating costume, experiencing the humiliation of being dumped by his partner moments before their scheduled performance. Roger cries out that everyone is looking at him, revealing his shame at being abandoned in such a public space. A spectator tersely informs Roger that nobody is actually looking at him because they're trying to watch the skating, but Roger's emotional state prevents him from accepting this reality. The scene mirrors Stan's previous partner's experience of being abandoned, though in Roger's case, the abandonment happens before physical injury rather than after. Stan rushes home to reconcile with Francine, but she understandably refuses to forgive him immediately. She's tired of feeling abandoned, tired of being treated as secondary to Stan's competitive obsessions. Rather than accept her legitimate anger, Stan instructs Clifford, his underpaid tunnel guard, to shoot Francine with a tranquilizer dart. Stan literally drugs his wife unconscious and brings her body to the ice rink, forcing her into the competition without her consent. This horrifying action demonstrates just how far Stan will go to get what he wants, crossing serious ethical boundaries and committing what amounts to assault to manufacture the partnership he now claims to value. The announcer introduces Stan and Francine Smith, skating their Mamma Mia fantasy, referencing the disco pop song by Swedish group ABBA. Francine wakes up mid-routine to discover she's already on the ice, skating in front of an audience while still groggy from being tranquilized. The music that plays, Mamma Mia, continues the episode's association of Stan's figure skating with disco and pop music coded as gay or campy in mainstream American culture. ABBA's music, while broadly popular, has particular significance in LGBT communities and became especially iconic after the musical Mamma Mia brought the songs back into cultural prominence. The choice to have Stan and Francine skate to this song rather than something more traditionally romantic or athletic reinforces the episode's camping of figure skating conventions. Stan and Francine argue while executing a flawless routine, their technical perfection contrasting sharply with their emotional discord. They yell at each other about trust and abandonment while their bodies move in perfect, synchronized harmony, demonstrating that athletic partnership and emotional partnership are completely different things. The routine ends, and without waiting to see their score, Stan and Francine leave the ice rink. They don't care about the judge's assessment because they've realized the score doesn't matter compared to their actual relationship. This represents character growth for Stan, choosing his marriage over competitive validation, though the fact that he had to drug and kidnap his wife to reach this realization significantly undermines the supposed progress. The episode ends with Roger winning the competition by skating with Terry Bates, one of Stan's openly gay neighbors. Roger injures Terry's partner Greg in a manner reminiscent of the Nancy Kerrigan attack, where figure skater Nancy Kerrigan was clubbed in the knee by associates of rival skater Tonya Harding before the 1994 Winter Olympics. Terry cries, "Why? Why?" just as Kerrigan did, creating a direct reference to one of figure skating's most infamous moments. Roger and Terry then compete as a same-sex pairs team, this time without any feminine disguise or attempt to pass as a traditional male-female pairing. They win the competition, and Roger finally gets his beloved wigs, including one styled like Wilma Flintstone from the animated series The Flintstones. The ending reveals that same-sex pairs skating is apparently accepted in the American Dad universe without comment or controversy. Terry and Roger skate together openly as two male characters with no disguise or explanation needed, suggesting the competition welcomes same-sex pairs on equal footing with mixed-sex pairs. This casual acceptance stands in contrast to real-world figure skating's much slower progress toward recognizing same-sex partnerships. For decades, competitive figure skating maintained strict gender requirements for pairs divisions, requiring one male and one female skater per team. Only recently have some competitions begun allowing same-sex pairs to compete, and these teams still face significant discrimination and limited opportunities compared to traditional partnerships. By having both Stan and Roger skate with male partners by the episode's end, even if Stan returns to Francine as his primary partner, the show normalizes same-sex athletic partnerships in a sport heavily associated with heteronormative romance narratives. The camp element comes not just from Roger's wigs and feminine presentation, but from the entire premise of Stan's desperate attempts to hide his figure skating, treating his graceful athletic hobby as if it were a shameful secret on par with infidelity or crime. The underground tunnels, the elaborate security, the 20 years of deception, all this absurd infrastructure built to protect Stan from the supposed horror of being known as a figure skater creates camp through exaggeration and tonal mismatch. The episode never explicitly labels Stan's figure skating as gay or queer, instead letting the cultural associations speak for themselves. Stan's shame about skating, his need to hide it from everyone, including his wife, his fear of being seen as a monster for pursuing this passion, all these reactions mirror the experiences of closeted LGBT individuals more than they mirror typical responses to having an unusual hobby. By making Stan's secret something as innocuous as figure skating rather than something that would actually threaten his marriage or career, the show highlights how irrational homophobia and rigid gender policing actually are. Stan builds a secret underground lair to hide the fact that he enjoys graceful athletic movement, revealing that the real problem isn't the skating itself, but the toxic masculinity that makes Stan unable to admit he does anything coded as feminine or gay. The episode's framing device returns at the end, with elderly Klaus finishing his bedtime story in the year 2045. This structure suggests that Stan's winter secret and his journey toward accepting his passion for figure skating will be remembered as significant enough to tell future generations. The grandson's request for stories about how people used to believe in the Bible pairs with Klaus's story about Stan's skating shame, implying both religious faith and rigid gender roles will seem equally outdated to people living in 2045. This optimistic view of social progress suggests that the shame and secrecy surrounding Stan's figure skating will eventually become incomprehensible to future generations who can't understand why anyone would hide such a harmless interest. Brian Boyle's script balances multiple tones throughout the episode, moving from domestic comedy to thriller elements during Francine's discovery of the secret passages, to sports movie parody during the training sequences, to genuine emotional drama during Stan and Francine's final routine. The episode also includes a secondary plotline where Steve and his friends accidentally receive a Russian mail-order bride named Svetlana instead of the binoculars they ordered, creating a subplot about objectification and immigration that somehow also connects to Klaus's 2045 narration. John Aoshima's direction keeps all these elements moving smoothly, never dwelling too long on any single tone or allowing the camp elements to completely overwhelm the character relationships at the story's core. Of Ice and Men represents American Dad's early engagement with LGBT themes through the safer avenue of artistic expression and gender performance, rather than through explicitly gay characters or relationships. By making Stan's secret hobby figure skating rather than something genuinely transgressive, the show can explore themes of masculine shame, closeting, and the fear of social judgment without actually depicting queer identity. Roger's feminine presentation while skating with Stan, combined with Roger and Terry's eventual same-sex pairs routine, pushes the episode closer to genuine representation while still maintaining plausible deniability about what exactly is being represented. The episode aired during American Dad's second season, when the show was still establishing its identity separate from Family Guy. The choice to give Stan this kind of vulnerability, allowing the show's most aggressively masculine character to have a secret passion for an activity associated with grace and artistry, demonstrated American Dad's willingness to complicate its characters beyond simple political stereotypes. Stan remains a conservative CIA agent with reactionary political views, but he also figure skates to disco music and forms an intense, athletic partnership with an alien in a blonde wig. These contradictions make Stan more interesting than a one-dimensional conservative caricature, while also creating space for the show to explore gender performance and masculine anxiety through comedy. The lasting image from Of Ice and Men is Stan and Roger practicing together, two characters who normally embody completely different approaches to masculinity, united in their shared obsession with winning a wig prize through superior figure skating technique. It's absurd, it's campy, and it's one of American Dad's clearest early statements that traditional masculine identity is performance rather than essence, something that can be put on and taken off as easily as one of Roger's 1,000 disguises. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to Roger, impersonating an adopted boy to live with Greg and Terry. Roger the alien has lived many lives in his decades, occupying the Smith family attic, but few disguises cut as close to the bone as 10-year-old Michael, the adopted Russian son of Greg Corbin and Terry Bates. The American Dad episode, A Boy Named Michael, aired on the 14th of September 2014 as the second episode of Season 10, written by Eric Richter and directed by Joe Daniello, with supervising directors Ron Hughart and Brent Woods. The episode presents Roger's infiltration of a gay couple's household not as a brief impersonation, but as a sustained domestic arrangement, where Roger literally moves in and participates in their family life, sleeping under their roof, eating at their table, and submitting to their parental authority. What begins as Roger's jealous pursuit of an upscale lifestyle transforms into an unexpectedly dark examination of controlling relationships, domestic abuse within same-sex partnerships, and the toxic dynamics that can exist behind the facade of cultured sophistication. The episode opens with Stan Smith attempting to wear out his aging chair, so Francine will let him buy a La Z-Boy recliner, one of his simple working-class aspirations. Roger helps Stan in this quest. the two spending quality time together, destroying furniture through aggressive use. During their bonding session, Greg and Terry appear on their local newscast to announce wonderful news. The couple, who work as co-anchors at WANG-TV, reveal they're adopting a 10-year-old Russian boy named Michael. Greg and Terry invite their neighbors, including the Smiths, to celebrate this decision at a party welcoming their new son into the family. The Smiths attend the celebration, though Stan shows minimal enthusiasm beyond his interest in playing with the baton collection that Greg and Terry keep under their bed, a detail Stan references with characteristic inappropriate directness. Roger brings a Spider-Man backpack as a gift, carefully selecting it from Toys R Us after taking a nap and shower. When Roger arrives at Greg and Terry's home, he encounters a level of wealth and refinement that makes him suddenly ashamed of his own gift and his association with the middle-class Smith family. The house overflows with expensive presents, cultured conversation, and sophisticated food that Roger finds initially off-putting but ultimately seductive in its implications of status and privilege. Roger watches Greg and Terry's daughter, Libby, a child born via surrogacy, with Francine acting as the surrogate mother in the earlier episode Surrogate from Season 3. Libby speaks only French, according to Roger's observation, representing the kind of cultural achievement Roger suddenly craves for himself. The contrast between the refined elegance of Greg and Terry's lifestyle and what Roger now sees as the trashy vulgarity of the Smith household becomes unbearable. When the family returns home and starts singing about pizza poppers, doing a juvenile dance while requesting different toppings, Roger snaps and declares his disgust with their lack of culture and sophistication. Roger references the sitcom Frasier, comparing himself to the cultured psychiatrist Frasier Crane, while calling Stan equivalent to Frasier's working-class father Martin, who famously owned an ugly, comfortable recliner that clashed with Frasier's expensive furniture. Stan takes offense at being called Frasier's dad, though just moments earlier he was excited about obtaining his own lazy boy, proving Roger's point about their different class aspirations. Roger declares that the Smith family has dragged him down to their level and prevented him from developing the refined tastes he deserves. He storms out, rejecting his longtime home in favor of pursuing entry into Greg and Terry's superior world. Roger goes to the airport where the real Michael is arriving from Russia. Using methods the episode doesn't explicitly show but references later, Roger tricks the actual 10-year-old boy into being sucked out of the airplane, effectively killing the child and stealing his identity. This murder, treated with the show's characteristic dark comedy, allows Roger to seamlessly replace Michael as Greg and Terry's adopted son. When Greg and Terry meet their new child at the airport, they find Roger in Michael's place, speaking with an affected Russian accent and asking about the American system. Greg and Terry welcome him home, completely fooled by Roger's performance. Living with Greg and Terry, Roger quickly discovers that their sophisticated lifestyle comes with incredibly high standards and oppressive expectations. The couple provides Roger with an antique ottoman to sleep on rather than an actual bed, instructing him not to lay his entire body on it to avoid damaging the furniture. They tell him he needs to lose his nasty Russian accent, an impossible demand for a real immigrant child, but one Roger could theoretically accomplish since he's faking the accent anyway. Greg reveals they have Michael's entire life planned out, including expectations that he'll learn conversational Japanese within a few months and potentially attend Dartmouth University. The level of control Greg exerts over every aspect of their children's lives becomes immediately apparent. Stan attempts to convince Roger to return to the Smith household, but Roger refuses and calls for Greg and Terry to have Stan removed from the property. Roger cruelly tells Stan that Stan has given him nothing in his life, rejecting their years of friendship and cohabitation in favor of his new upscale family. Stan responds to this rejection by embracing the white trash identity Roger accused him of representing, deliberately making the Smith front yard as trashy and lower class as possible. Stan sets up yard clutter, encourages people to smoke and defecate by bushes, and most importantly, he finally gets his lazy boy recliner, placing it prominently in the yard where Roger can see it from Greg and Terry's house. The domestic dynamics between Greg and Terry reveal themselves to be deeply unhealthy despite their outward appearance of cultured sophistication. Over breakfast, Greg and Terry squabble about food choices, and Terry reveals he has lower standards than Greg requires. Terry admits to Roger in confidence that sometimes he just wants a ho-ho, referring to the packaged chocolate snack cakes that Greg would never permit in their refined household. Greg acts as a domestic tyrant, refusing to let Terry have anything he likes that Greg doesn't approve of, forcing Terry to use trickery and deception to get any relief from Greg's rigid standards. The episode shows Greg physically grabbing Terry by the wrist for buying the wrong kind of eggs, a moment of physical control that hints at deeper patterns of abuse within their relationship. Roger watches these dynamics with growing horror, realizing that Greg's sophistication masks authoritarian control that extends to every family member. When Terry treats Roger and Libby to ho-hos as a small rebellion against Greg's standards, Roger finds himself in the position of knowing Terry's secret vices. Terry decides he must kill Michael to prevent the boy from potentially revealing Terry's violations of Greg's rules, showing how the controlling relationship has warped Terry's judgment to the point where he considers murdering a child preferable to facing Greg's disapproval. The fact that Terry doesn't know Roger is actually an adult alien rather than a real 10-year-old boy makes Terry's decision even darker. As far as Terry knows, he's plotting to kill an actual child to hide his junk food consumption. Meanwhile, Stan continues his campaign of deliberate trashiness on the Smith front lawn. Terry comes over to admire Stan's lazy boy recliner and talks Greg into getting one for their household, horrifying Roger, who sees his new, sophisticated family adopting the very working-class furniture he fled the Smiths to escape. Roger decides he has to kill Terry to preserve his better life, mirroring Terry's own murderous plans. The episode creates a dark comedy situation where both Terry and Roger independently decide the other must die, each believing murder is the appropriate solution to their domestic problems. Greg and Terry stress over posing for their Christmas photo, leading Terry to suggest they relax at their lake house. The family travels to this second home, another marker of wealth that distinguishes Greg and Terry from the middle-class Smiths. At the lake house, Terry executes his plan to kill Michael, taking Roger out on a boat and attempting to drown him. Roger simultaneously tries to kill Terry, and their mutual murder attempts reveal their intentions to each other. They fight on the boat with Terry ultimately knocking Roger overboard into the mountain lake. Terry believes he has successfully drowned the boy and calls Greg to report the death, expecting his partner to be upset about losing their newly adopted son. Greg's response reveals the full extent of their dysfunctional family dynamics. Rather than mourning Michael's death, Greg expresses relief, admitting he was planning to kick Michael out of the family anyway for not fitting their standards. The child had only been with them for a short time, but Greg had already decided he wasn't worth keeping. Terry's fake tears about the drowning receive a dismissive brush-off from Greg, who sees the child's death as solving a problem rather than creating a tragedy. This moment exposes how Greg and Terry's adoption of Michael was never really about providing a home for a child in need, but rather about filling their empty third bedroom and acquiring another status symbol to match their cultured lifestyle. Stan rescues Roger from the lake, having observed Roger's attempt to cut Terry's brake line earlier and understanding that something dangerous was happening. Roger apologizes to Stan for rejecting him and calling him low class, finally recognizing that the Smith family's middle-class values and genuine affection are superior to Greg and Terry's sophisticated but emotionally toxic household. Stan and Roger reconcile and go out for pizza poppers together, the very food Roger had mocked earlier, now representing authentic connection and enjoyment rather than cultural inadequacy. The episode concludes with Greg and Terry delivering a news report about their adopted Russian son Michael's tragic death by drowning in a mountain lake. They ask viewers to send Crate and Barrel gift cards in lieu of flowers, with Terry correcting that they actually prefer Restoration Hardware gift cards, turning even their son's death into an opportunity to acquire expensive home goods from their preferred upscale retailers. This grotesque moment crystallizes everything wrong with Greg and Terry's priorities, showing how completely they've subordinated human relationships to materialistic status seeking. Roger has one final act of revenge planned. He poses as his own drowned ghost to scare Terry, getting some satisfaction from terrorizing the man who tried to kill him. Roger also attacks his own mirror reflection, settling scores with that persistent thorn in his side, because even in the episode's resolution, Roger remains fundamentally Roger, petty and vindictive, and committed to elaborate performances. The mirror gag provides comic relief, while maintaining Roger's character consistency even after his supposed growth and reconciliation with Stan. A Boy Named Michael stands out in American Dad's catalog for its willingness to portray a gay couple not as saints or victims, but as deeply flawed people capable of the same controlling, abusive, and narcissistic behaviors as any other characters on the show. Greg and Terry had appeared in numerous episodes since the series began, usually positioned as the sophisticated, slightly snobbish but ultimately decent neighbors who provided contrast to Stan's working-class conservatism. They were also the show's most prominent LGBT representation, existing in every episode as a reminder that Langley Falls contained openly gay residents living normal suburban lives. Previous episodes established key facts about Greg and Terry's relationship and family. In Surrogate from Season 3, which aired on the 2nd of December 2007, Greg and Terry decided to have a baby through in vitro fertilization, with Francine volunteering to be their surrogate mother. Greg spent that entire episode terrified of becoming a father, while Terry embraced the upcoming arrival. Stan kidnapped baby Libby after her birth, attempting to take her to Nebraska, where gay couples had no parental rights, before ultimately learning his lesson and returning her. Greg and Terry took out a restraining order against Stan for the kidnapping, establishing legal boundaries to protect their daughter. A Boy Named Michael reveals what happened to Libby in the years since her birth. She lives with her fathers, speaks only French, and exists under Greg's suffocating control, along with Terry and eventually Michael. The episode voiced Libby with Stacey Love Belizaire, marking one of her few appearances in later seasons. The show positioned Greg and Terry as news anchors, careers that provided them the wealth and public platform that enabled their upscale lifestyle. Their work as co-anchors also meant they presented a public image of professional success and stability that masked the private dysfunction of their home life. The episode's treatment of domestic abuse within a same-sex relationship breaks ground by simply acknowledging that such dynamics exist. Greg's controlling behavior toward Terry, his physical grabbing, his refusal to allow Terry any pleasures Greg doesn't approve, and his enforcement of rigid standards through intimidation, all constitute emotional and potentially physical abuse. Terry's fear of Greg's disapproval has become so powerful that Terry contemplates murder rather than confess to eating snack cakes. The show presents this abuse matter-of-factly without excusing it or suggesting it's unique to gay relationships. Greg is abusive in the same ways controlling partners of any gender or sexuality can be abusive, exercising power through criticism, physical control, and the threat of withdrawal of affection. The episode also examines class anxiety and cultural aspiration through Roger's jealous pursuit of sophistication. Roger sees himself as naturally refined, held back only by his unfortunate association with the unsophisticated Smith family. When exposed to Greg and Terry's lifestyle, Roger immediately covets their expensive possessions, their cultural knowledge, their French-speaking daughter, and their overall air of being better than their middle-class neighbors. Roger believes that adopting the trappings of upper-class life will make him genuinely superior rather than just better at performing superiority. The episode's resolution teaches Roger that authentic relationships matter more than sophisticated performances, though Roger himself probably doesn't internalize this lesson permanently given his character's consistent patterns across hundreds of episodes. For the audience, the contrast between the Smiths' genuine, if unsophisticated affection and Greg and Terry's beautiful but toxic household makes the thematic point clearly. Stan may be crass and Roger may be right that the family lacks culture, but they actually care about each other, while Greg and Terry treat their children as accessories to be discarded when they fail to enhance the family's image. The murder of the real Michael, the 10-year-old Russian orphan who thought he was getting a family only to be killed by an alien who wanted to steal his new life, hangs over the entire episode as an unacknowledged tragedy. The show plays Roger's replacement of Michael for dark comedy, treating the murder as just another example of Roger's sociopathic willingness to do anything to get what he wants. But the real Michael remains a child who died, whose adoption by Greg and Terry might have been his one chance at a family after presumably difficult circumstances in Russia. Roger did that child a favor, according to one reading, since Greg would have eventually kicked Michael out anyway for failing to meet impossible standards. But murder is hardly a rescue. The episode aired in 2014, during a period of rapidly shifting American attitudes toward LGBT rights and same-sex marriage. The Supreme Court would legalize same-sex marriage nationwide in 2015, just months after this episode premiered. In that cultural context, a boy named Michael made a statement by refusing to idealize gay relationships or gay parenting, instead depicting Greg and Terry as capable of the same abusive, controlling, and narcissistic behaviors as any other parents on television. This equal opportunity character assassination actually represents a form of respect, treating gay characters as fully developed people rather than symbols of virtue who must be protected from criticism. Eric Richter's script balances the episode's dark themes with American Dad's characteristic absurdist humor, moving seamlessly from Roger murdering a child to Stan deliberately making his yard trashy to Terry attempting to drown Roger in a mountain lake. Joe Daniello's direction maintains the show's visual style while emphasizing the contrast between Greg and Terry's beautiful home and the Smiths' comfortable but unrefined house. The production details of the expensive gifts, the antique ottoman, and the lake house all visually communicate wealth that Roger finds seductive before discovering its costs. The episode's musical numbers include the Pizza Popper song that Roger initially mocks, the Dartmouth fight song referenced in Greg and Terry's expectations for Michael, and Life is a Highway mentioned in the credits. These musical choices, particularly the Pizza Popper jingle, represent the kind of lower-class entertainment Roger rejects in his pursuit of sophistication. The fact that Roger returns to celebrating pizza poppers with Stan by the episode's end suggests some character growth, though anyone familiar with Roger knows this lesson probably lasted until the next episode at most. A Boy Named Michael remains one of American Dad's most interesting examinations of class, sexuality, domestic relationships, and the difference between sophisticated appearance and genuine human connection. By making Roger literally live with a gay couple as their adopted son, the episode creates sustained engagement with LGBT domestic life, rather than treating gay characters as occasional guests or neighbors who appear for specific plot purposes. Roger participates in their family dynamics, eats meals with them, sleeps in their home, and experiences their parenting firsthand, giving the episode more sustained engagement with same-sex family life than most of the show's other Greg and Terry appearances. The episode's willingness to depict Greg as abusive and both Greg and Terry as narcissistic status seekers who treat their children as accessories represents television's growing comfort with portraying LGBT characters as complex, flawed people rather than saints who must be protected from negative characterization. Roger's infiltration of their home exposes the dysfunction hidden behind their cultured facade, teaching him and the audience that sophistication without humanity is just performance, and pizza poppers shared with people who actually care about you beat expensive dinners with people who see you as a status symbol. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have Greg surviving the post-apocalypse storyline as Greg. American Dad reached its 200th episode milestone with The 200, a post-apocalyptic spectacle that aired on TBS on the 28th of March 2016 as the 10th episode of Season 11. Written by Brett Cawley and Robert Maitia, and directed by Jansen Yee, with supervising directors Ron Hughart and Brent Woods, the episode imagines Langley Falls after a catastrophic Hadron Collider explosion has wiped out most of civilization, leaving survivors scattered across a wasteland where technology no longer functions and most people have descended into cannibalism. In this bleak landscape where humanity has largely collapsed into savagery, Greg Corbin, the openly gay news anchor who has been Stan Smith's neighbor throughout the series, survives and persists as exactly who he's always been. The episode never changes Greg's identity, never questions his sexuality, and never suggests that the apocalypse has somehow altered the fundamental fact that he's a gay man who once had a partner and a daughter and a life defined by his relationships and identity. Greg simply exists in the wasteland as Greg, maintaining his humanity and moral character, while nearly everyone else in Langley Falls transforms into teeth-sharpening cannibals. The episode opens with ominous text reading in the not-too-impossible future, immediately signaling departure from American Dad's usual contemporary suburban setting. The show's normal upbeat theme song begins to play only to malfunction and short out, orally representing how completely the world has changed. Stan Smith wanders through the ruins of Langley Falls, his body covered in tattoos that commemorate his regrets and the family members he believes are dead. Graffiti warns about the 200 throughout the destroyed town, mysterious entities that survivors fear above all else. Upside-down American flags and skeletal remains mark the landscape. Stan was in South America on a CIA mission when the blast occurred, leaving him separated from his family with no way to know if they survived the catastrophe that destroyed civilization. Stan returns to the ruins of his home, navigating carefully through a town full of hostile strangers until he encounters Principal Lewis scavenging in the Smith family kitchen. Lewis has survived by turning to cannibalism, filing his teeth down to sharp points like most other Langley Falls survivors. Lewis maintains his characteristic affable manner even while planning to eat Stan, representing how the apocalypse has warped familiar people into monsters who retain surface-level personalities while committing atrocities. Stan tries to learn if Lewis knows anything about his family's whereabouts, but Lewis denies having information. Their conversation reveals Stan's falcon tattoo, which leads to a flashback showing Stan, Klaus, and Haley fishing before the blast, a final memory of family time that ended in an argument instead of connection. Lewis attacks Stan with sharpened teeth, attempting to satisfy his cannibalistic hunger. Stan escapes the house and immediately runs into Greg Corbin, his former neighbor still recognizable despite the apocalypse. The episode makes no mention of Terry Bates, Greg's partner throughout most of the series, because voice actor Mike Barker had left American Dad, leading to Terry being written out in an earlier season 11 episode, where Terry left Greg to follow the band 311 on tour. In the context of The 200, Terry's absence goes unaddressed, leaving Greg as a single gay man surviving alone in post-apocalyptic Langley Falls. Before Stan and Greg can properly reunite, Lewis chops off one of Greg's legs for food, forcing Stan to carry his injured neighbor while they flee. Stan learns from Greg that the Smith family headed to a place called New Haven, a safe zone for survivors. With Greg strapped to his back since he can no longer walk independently, Stan begins the journey to find his family. This physical arrangement, with Stan literally carrying Greg through the wasteland, creates an extended sequence where the two men must rely on each other completely for survival. Greg inquires about Stan's doily tattoo, prompting a flashback to a father-son obstacle course where Stan's excessive pushing caused Steve to break his leg. Steve spent his recovery time knitting doilies, and Stan realizes, while carrying Greg, that he should have carried Steve through the course the same way he now carries his injured neighbor. The journey continues with Stan carrying Greg across dangerous terrain, passing scavengers and hunters who all fear the mysterious 200. When hunters trap them, the hunters flee after Roger appears, claiming to be the 200, using fear tactics to steal spoons and other supplies from terrified survivors. Roger reveals he made up the 200 as a scam, then agrees to join Stan and Greg's mission to find the family. The three unlikely companions hop onto a flaming train to escape a pack of wild dogs, and for a moment they think they've lost Greg, but he manages to haul himself aboard despite having only one leg. On the train, Roger tries to avoid Stan's constant explanations of his tattoos, but Stan launches into the story behind his trash can tattoo, which commemorates Francine. A flashback shows Stan forgetting to take out the trash, leading Francine to chase the garbage truck in an elaborate sequence parodying Ferris Bueller's Day Off. When a savage survivor attacks Greg on the train, Roger tosses Stan out to escape, leaving Greg alone with the attacker, but Greg somehow survives and catches up with them again, now covered in blood. Roger calls Greg a weak link because he's lost his other leg by this point, but Greg persists in following Stan and Roger toward New Haven. The trio arrives at the New Haven safe zone only to find it burnt out and deserted. Roger discovers Francine's locket in the ruins, leading everyone to believe the family died in the destruction. Principal Lewis appears and chops off Greg's second leg, taking both limbs for food. Lewis captures Stan, Roger, and Greg, transporting them in a cage that dangles precariously near a cliff edge. Stan mentally shuts down, explaining another tattoo related to his South American mission, while begging to be killed since he believes his family is gone. Lewis pulls a gun to execute them just as Haley arrives with a trained falcon, knocking the weapon away. Steve nets Lewis in an oversized doily, demonstrating how the family members developed survival skills based on their pre-apocalypse interests. The cart containing the prisoners rolls toward the cliff, and both Steve and Haley prove unable to stop it. Francine appears, using the muscle she gained from constantly hauling trash cans to pull the cage back from the cliff edge and free Stan, Roger, and Greg. The family reunion brings all the Smiths back together for the first time since the blast, and Greg remains with them throughout, having proven his loyalty and humanity through the journey. The group faces immediate danger from two directions. Lewis whistles to summon all the savage cannibalistic survivors of Langley Falls, and simultaneously, 200 clones of Roger arrive to attack. These clones are Roger's previous personas made manifest, split off from him when he wandered into the Hadron Collider at Langley Quantum Labs to retrieve his sunglasses, causing the catastrophic blast that destroyed civilization. Jeff Fisher arrives riding a massive, mutated Klaus, who has somehow transformed from a goldfish into a fire-breathing dragon. This deus ex machina destroys the 200 Roger clones and presumably defeats the cannibal horde. The episode time skips forward to show Stan telling his grandchildren about the battle, admitting he didn't have a great view from his hiding spot, but emphasizing the important lesson that Roger should never be allowed near a Hadron Collider unsupervised. The final scene shows the Smiths living in a lush valley, having formed a small farming commune where they cultivate crops and rebuild some semblance of normal life. Greg appears with them in this future, integrated into their family unit as a permanent member of their post-apocalyptic community. The episode's significance for LGBT representation lies not in anything Greg says or does, but in the simple fact of his continued existence as himself. Greg survives the apocalypse as an openly gay man in a world where most social structures have collapsed. The episode never suggests that the destruction of civilization somehow erased or changed sexuality as a concept. Greg doesn't become straight, doesn't hide his identity, and doesn't transform into some asexual survivor archetype. He remains Greg Corbin, the character audiences have known for years, a man whose gayness is an established part of who he is, but not the defining characteristic of his survival story. Notably, the episode positions Greg as morally superior to nearly every other Langley Falls resident. While Principal Lewis, Tank Bates, and masses of other former neighbors descended into cannibalism, filing their teeth and hunting former friends for meat, Greg maintained his humanity. He hid in his basement rather than joining the cannibal hordes. He allied with Stan to search for the family rather than attacking them for food. Multiple sources and reviews specifically note that Greg is the only person in Langley Falls, besides the Smith family, who didn't resort to cannibalism, making him literally one of the last decent human beings in the wasteland. This moral distinction matters because it positions the gay character as fundamentally good in a world where heterosexual characters like Lewis have become monsters. The episode treats Greg's injuries with dark comedy, showing him progressively losing both legs to Lewis's cannibalistic appetite while continuing to persist through sheer determination. Roger repeatedly tries to abandon Greg, calling him a weak link and claiming he slows them down, but Greg keeps catching up, hauling himself onto trains and through the wasteland with increasingly fewer limbs. This physical comedy could read as cruel, except that Greg's persistence demonstrates his strength of character. Despite catastrophic injuries and Roger's active attempts to ditch him, Greg continues fighting to help Stan find his family, motivated by loyalty and decency rather than self-preservation. The episode's ending, showing Greg integrated into the Smith family commune in the recovered valley, suggests that chosen family matters more than blood relations or traditional structures. Greg has no biological connection to the Smiths. His partner Terry abandoned him even before the apocalypse, and his daughter Libby goes unmentioned in the episode, perhaps dead or perhaps elsewhere. Yet Greg ends up as part of the Smith family unit in their new world, accepted and included without question. Stan carrying Greg through the wasteland becomes a metaphor for how the Smiths lift up their community members rather than abandoning them when circumstances make support difficult. Seth MacFarlane voices Greg throughout the episode, maintaining the character's consistent vocal characterization despite the drastically different setting. The episode also marks one of very few appearances by Greg after Terry's departure from the series, making Greg's survival in this milestone 200th episode particularly notable. The show could have easily left Greg out entirely given Terry's absence and Greg's reduced role in later seasons, but the writers chose to feature him prominently as one of Stan's primary companions throughout the post-apocalyptic journey. The 200 deliberately references numerous post-apocalyptic properties, including The 100, Fallout, Terminator 2, and various other dystopian media. The title itself parodies The 100, a CW series about teenage survivors, while the opening visual style and music mirror Fallout's retro-futuristic wasteland aesthetic. Within this landscape of genre references, Greg's inclusion represents American Dad's commitment to maintaining its LGBT characters, even when generic conventions might suggest otherwise. Post-apocalyptic fiction often defaults to heteronormative survival narratives, where reproduction and traditional family structures become paramount. The 200 rejects this by including a gay character whose survival and inclusion in the found family matters regardless of his ability to contribute to biological reproduction. The episode aired during American Dad's transition from Fox to TBS, a move that saved the show from cancellation and allowed it to continue producing episodes with the same creative team and voice actors. Fox had repeatedly threatened cancellation despite decent ratings, but TBS provided a new home where American Dad could reach 200 episodes and beyond. The creative team celebrated this milestone with an ambitious, non-canonical episode that allowed maximum creative freedom, since nothing that happened would affect the show's continuity. Within this playground of apocalyptic storytelling, the choice to include Greg as a major character and survivor demonstrates the writer's ongoing commitment to the character, despite the behind-the-scenes complications of Terry's departure. Brett Cawley and Robert Maitia's script balances spectacle with character moments, using Stan's tattoos as framing devices for flashbacks that illuminate his relationships with each family member. The doily tattoo for Steve, the trash can for Francine, the falcon for Haley, all demonstrate how Stan's regrets about small failures in parenting and partnership haunt him in the wasteland. Greg's presence throughout these revelations makes him witness to Stan's emotional journey, positioned as trusted companion rather than expendable supporting character. When the family finally reunites, Greg's inclusion in the celebration and the final commune feels earned because he contributed meaningfully to Stan's survival and growth throughout the episode. Jansen Yee's direction maintains American Dad's visual style while adapting to the post-apocalyptic setting, using desaturated colors, dynamic action sequences, and careful composition to create a convincing wasteland. The episode's production values rival those of feature films, particularly in the climactic battle sequence, where 200 Roger clones attack simultaneously with individualized animation for many personas. This technical achievement for the series' 200th episode demonstrates the resources and commitment TBS provided to celebrate the milestone appropriately. The episode's classification as non-canonical means none of its events affect future episodes, allowing the creative team maximum freedom to destroy the world, mutate Klaus into a dragon, and fundamentally alter the show's reality. However, even within this explicitly non-canonical space, the episode maintains character consistency. Greg remains recognizably Greg, with his sophisticated cultural sensibilities and tendency toward sharp observations. When he tells Stan, "Before the 200 kills us, I want to tell you that you were often an inconsiderate neighbor," the line perfectly captures Greg's character, using potentially final moments to deliver honest criticism rather than false sentimentality. The 200 ultimately celebrates American Dad's longevity and creative evolution, while honoring the characters and relationships that built the show's success over 200 episodes. Greg's survival and integration into the Smith family commune represents television's gradual progress toward treating LGBT characters as permanent fixtures rather than disposable supporting cast. In a genre that often marginalizes or eliminates queer characters, American Dad's 200th episode chooses instead to position a gay character as one of the few survivors who maintained his humanity and morality when civilization collapsed. Greg endures not despite being gay, but simply as a person whose sexuality is one aspect of his identity alongside his courage, loyalty, and fundamental decency. The apocalypse changes everything about Langley Falls except the fact that Greg Corbin remains exactly who he's always been, an openly gay man surviving and thriving in whatever world exists around him. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.